The following recording was made available to the public by the FBI in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act. Its contents are fully unredacted, as it was deemed too absurd to be a risk to national security. Well, it was a completely reductive understanding of the argument I was trying to make. He doesn't do drag in defiance of his own masculinity. Bugs Bunny is a wild animal. He was never subjected to the human model of learned patriarchal behavior in the first place. His use of drag is one of the myriad ways he mocks the normative masculinity embodied by human characters like Elmer Fudd and Yosemite Sam. The act of gender is entirely performative. Societal norms are a joke to Bugs Bunny. Otherwise, he would wear clothes all the time. Oh well. There's no getting through to some people, I guess. Let's talk about something else. Zach, I've been thinking about the works of David Lynch lately. You know, he passed away not too long ago, and I can't help but see his influence everywhere I look. Few artists have as distinct a style as he did. His experimental approach and his surrealist storytelling challenged the mainstream conventions of the form. To Lynch, art was a way of bringing dreams to life. Dreams defy logic. Anything can happen, and nothing explains itself. Perhaps that's why David Lynch never offers his own interpretations of his work. Cinema is a visual language, and it's up to us to derive our own meaning from the abstractions he presents to us. It should come as no surprise to you, Zach, that most of his works were polarizing on release. It's impossible to deny his impact, though. Why, his first film, Eraserhead, was an immediate favorite of Stanley Kubrick's, who would use the haunting, industrial sound design as inspiration for The Shining. Perhaps more famous than any of David Lynch's works was the mystery horror TV drama Twin Peaks, which he co-created with Mark Frost. The show, which originally ran for 2 seasons on ABC from 1990 to 1991, centered around the investigation of the murder of the teenage Laura Palmer. The eccentric FBI Special Agent Dale Cooper is brought in to investigate the equally eccentric locals and make sense of the strange occurrences that haunt the small, unassuming Pacific Northwest town of Twin Peaks. Sounds familiar, doesn't it, Zach? Well, it ought to, because it would go on to become one of the most influential TV shows ever made. Mark Frost's background in writing police dramas, and Lynch's fascination with dreams, the unconscious and the spiritual, resulted in an unpredictable mystery that captivated audiences around the world. Twin Peaks attracted an especially devoted Japanese fan base, so much so that the 1992 prequel film, Fire Walk With Me, released in Japan 3 months before it would in America. Calling David Lynch a filmmaker feels a bit simplistic. He was an artist. I know that can sound pretentious, Zach, but I quite literally mean that his work goes beyond simply filmmaking. He was also a writer, a painter, a musician, an actor, but video games were one of the few art forms he didn't dabble in. And other than a Twin Peaks VR experience released in 2019, his works were never officially adapted into video games. Despite that, I'd argue he's one of the most influential filmmakers on the medium of video games. Bold claim, I know, Zach, but Fire Walk With Me for a moment. For starters, many notable developers like Metal Gear and Death Stranding creator Hideo Kojima, Immortality creator Sam Barlow, Killer 7 creator Suda51, and D4 Dark Dreams Don't Die creator Swery65 have all worn their love of David Lynch on their sleeve. Sam Lake, the creative director of Remedy Games, is perhaps the loudest with his love. It's most obvious in games like Alan Wake and Control, which have surrealist horror elements weaved into their narrative. But even their earlier, pulpier Max Payne series has Lynchian nightmare sequences that feel prototypical of what the studio would go on to achieve. And David Lynch's impact isn't exclusive to horror. He was also a major source of inspiration for the Nintendo title The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. The game's director, Takashi Tezuka, wanted the setting to feel like Twin Peaks, and the development team went so far as to meet with the show's co-creator Mark Frost for creative advice. Link's Awakening is much more whimsical and fantastical than Twin Peaks, but the heightened, if somewhat melancholy tone and the way the player unravels the mystery around them is indebted to it. We live inside a dream. But who is the dreamer? Yoshiaki Koizumi, the writer of Link's Awakening, would go on to co-direct The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask, and the way the people of Termina slavishly devote themselves to routine and structure to cope with the looming feeling of dread and tragedy is certainly reminiscent of Twin Peaks, to say nothing of the surreal, nightmarish atmosphere. We live inside a dream. Speaking of dreams, what about that town we see in our restless dreams, Zach? That's right, Silent Hill. Perhaps the most obvious examples of Lynchian video games. The foggy, small-town nightmare setting speaks for itself, but the, pardon the pun, Zach, linchpin to Silent Hill's artful reputation is how successfully it adapted the psychological themes into the interactive medium. The developers of Silent Hill 2 are not at all shy about Lynch's influence. Its producer, Akihiro Imamura, admitted that Lynch was a major inspiration before the game had even released. And its art director, Masahiro Ito, recently mentioned that one of the other creative influences was Lynch's 1997 film, Lost Highway. Speaking of Lost Highways, I think we might be a bit lost ourselves, Zach. This map certainly isn't any help. Oh well, just gives us more time to talk, I suppose. Kentucky Route Zero. Now that is another game indebted to David Lynch. Hell, we could talk for hours about point-and-click games alone, whether they're older titles like Harvester and Phantasmagoria, or newer ones like 2022's Who's Lisa. Lynch's fingerprints can be found at the scene. Sometimes you'll find them in places you wouldn't expect, like an RPG. There's an interview Vice published with Yoshinori Kitase, the director of Final Fantasy VII, where he mentioned his favorite show was Twin Peaks, and that David Lynch's peculiar, mysterious world captivated him. You can certainly see a bit of Laura Palmer in the character of Aerith Gainsborough, and it's hard to listen to some of Nobuo Uematsu's score for the game without thinking of Angelo Badalamenti's music from Twin Peaks. Another Japanese RPG series, Persona, owes much of its identity to Lynch. The recurring location of the Velvet Room, a space between dream and reality, evokes the Black Lodge from Twin Peaks, as well as the title of Lynch's 1986 neo-noir film, Blue Velvet. Zach, I hear the word Persona, and you know what I think of? Ingmar Bergman's Persona, a 1966 Swedish psychological drama starring Bibi Andersson and Liv Ullmann. The experimental, challenging nature of the film has made it the subject of fervent analysis since its release, though Bergman himself never offered an explanation for the film, believing it was something to be felt rather than understood. Many analyses of Persona note that the film shares its name with a theory from Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. The persona, according to Jung, was the social face or mask a person presents to the world. It serves the twofold purpose of presenting an idealized version of oneself while also concealing their true nature. You understand, Zach? Zach, it may come as no surprise to you that Jung, Bergman, and Persona were tremendous influences on David Lynch. Remember when I said that the developers of Link's Awakening consulted with Mark Frost? Well, according to Frost, the advice he gave was, don't be afraid to use dreamlike Jungian symbolism. Things can connect thematically without having to connect concretely. Zach, I can't say I know much about psychology, but I do know a thing or two about movies. For example, I know I like them. And I know that the ones David Lynch made are among my favorites. His unique vision and his total refusal to explain his work made it feel personal to him, as well as the viewer. That meaning I've made for myself is something I carry with me wherever I go. Zach, I don't think it would be dramatic to say that you and I wouldn't exist without David Lynch. Without even knowing us, he helped shape our world and the medium of video games. He inspired creators and their audiences to find new ways to live inside a dream. I'll miss him, Zach. Death is seldom kind and never fair. I'll treasure what he left behind for as long as I live. May he rest in peace. I'm FBI Special Agent Francis York Morgan. But please, call me York. That's what everyone calls me. And this is Select and Start. Hello and welcome to Select and Start, the podcast about meaningful and memorable video games. I'm your host, Keifer, and every episode I bring on a guest who selects a game that made an impact on their life. I have a wonderful guest with me today. She is a writer, editor, and filmmaker. It is my honor to introduce Shannon Strucci. Shannon, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Thanks for being on. I'm excited too. This was, I want to say, one of the most bizarre games I've played on the podcast. And yeah, it is. But I am really eager to talk about that. But before we get into that, I want to make sure that the listeners get to know you and your tastes a little bit. So what do you do and what do you like?
I'm a professional video editor. I used to make video essays on YouTube. I did a video essay on parasocial relationships that a lot of people liked a lot. And I did some videos with H-Bomber Guy. I've edited and like worked on a ton of different stuff. I do podcasting. Right now I'm on the Southern Gothic, like queer body horror podcast, Oddity Roadshow, which is really fun. If you like actual play podcasts, check that out. But yeah, I used to make YouTube videos and I used to do a lot more podcasting, but I had to get like a day job. I worked for a while at like a really big YouTube channel I've never publicly named, although I have disparaged them and said it was bad working there. And now I work I don't want to say exactly what I work on, but I work on like movie promo professionally, like movie and TV promo, which also why like I don't tweet as much about like upcoming movies and TV. And it's not like I'm working on promo for all of it, but it feels kind of unethical to be like, oh, I worked on something for this, and like now I'm talking about it. So I've kind of like left the critic and video essayist life for the most part.
Gotcha. Well, we're talking video games here today, so I hope that isn't a conflict of interest.
Oh no, I don't work on. I don't think I've ever worked on anything. Well, I'm doing voice acting for a game called Blank Sword that's coming out. But
Really?
no, I don't work on video game promo usually.
Well, hell yeah, we have a video game voice actor in our midst. Congratulations, and also welcome, and hell yeah. Let's talk about video games then. As you know, and as I know, and as everyone knows, because it continues to be a culture war issue, no community likes to gatekeep more than the gamers. So we have to check your gaming credentials, Shannon. Let's talk about your gaming history, who or what got you into it, your relationship with it throughout the years, and so on. What is Shannon's portrait of a gamer?
Well, I grew up, we didn't have a lot of money when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
So my first memories of video games are either playing my cousins like PS1 or N64, or playing Flash games, like the Cartoon Network Flash games, like the Escape the Room games, like Escape the Viridian Room. Lenny Loose Jocks was the series of like, I think, Australian games. I played so many Flash games, and then I got a PlayStation, and I played a lot of like platformers and JRPGs, and then I got a PS2, and Silent Hill 2 for a long time was my favorite video game. Very big into Silent Hill stuff. I don't typically keep up with AAA gaming. I never have. I've liked a lot of indie games or like weird little outsider art games. I
Sure.
really like the haunted PS1 kind of aesthetic and that whole sort of like subculture. My friend David and I made for a game jam, we made like a PS1 style horror game called Small's Island Woes, which was in like an Easter weekend one year, and there's still people who do let's plays of it, which is really cool.
Oh, nice.
So I like point and click adventure games a lot, like Telltale stuff. And older point and click adventure games. Out of AAA stuff, I like Atlas, Persona. I like Zelda games, and just like every horror game that I've been able to get my hands on. Although not as much like the big sort of bombastic like American jump scare games. I don't like those as much, but I'll play just about anything. I don't like sports games that much, or I didn't like racing games when those were bigger in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, like what is a racing game now? Mario Kart? And then...
Oh yeah, I don't know. I remember I would just turn around and go backwards and just try to like die in the game. I would get so bored.
Yeah, right. So what do you think draws you to horror and that PS1 aesthetic?
Some of it is just nostalgia. Like one of the videos I did with H-Bomb was about VHS. And like VHS almost is like an art form or an aesthetic, because obviously like there's less detail, like the famous anecdotes about the shark animatronic in Jaws, how it didn't work, so the movie was scarier.
Yeah.
And I think with sort of like lo-fi, low poly aesthetics, you can fill things in with your imagination. Are there things have to be stylized in a certain way? And I know you mentioned this to me as something you were going to bring up, but I didn't play Majora's Mask until like maybe COVID, like a few years ago. And I was like, wow, like every haunted PS1 style game borrowed from this. Like I had played most of the other Zeldas, but I was really impressed by
Creepypasta King for a reason.
Yeah. I just think for me it is nostalgia. Like I'm in my 30s, so that's what I grew up playing. But I think it's a way to not just try for hyper realistic graphics or like pixel art, and it can have its own like tropes or I don't know. It's a really cool aesthetic.
Yeah, no, there's a handful of Brian Eno quotes that I beat into the ground on this podcast, and one of them is about nostalgia and obsolescence, where as soon as something is technologically obsolete, it immediately becomes nostalgic.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason, like, besides space considerations, pixel indie games became huge during the Xbox Live Arcade era. And now we're seeing this like GameCube, PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64 era sort of become the nostalgic thing, as that becomes the 25, God, almost 30 30. The PlayStation came out in 1994, didn't it? So 30 to 20 years ago, that era is now like the peak nostalgia thing. And I definitely see so many things like capitalized on that aesthetic. Last year was huge for that. There was Crow County. There was Mouthwashing.
I was going to bring up Mouthwashing. I thought that was a good game.
I haven't played it yet. I've seen people talk about it and I'm eager to play it, but I just dedicated 20 hours to Deadly Premonition, which is great and all, but it's also like, maybe that's the perfect time to jump into a game like Mouthwashing because you're sort of jumping into something that is at least as graphically similar.
Yeah, that's a lot shorter and a lot more like technically competent, even though I prefer Deadly Premonition as a game. The Mouthwashing isn't broken.
Yeah, it looks like that on purpose.
Yeah.
So what would you say your favorite console is?
I mean, it's nostalgia bias. It's PS2.
Mm-hmm.
Like the PS2 era had so many incredible games. Although I played a lot of Flash games and text-based games and stuff online. But I mean, obviously the PS2 kind of predated how easy it is now to put out an independent game versus in like 2002 or whatever. Or at least access as like a consumer of games like itch.io or Steam. I can grab a billion different things. And so the PS2, like that catalog is inherently more limited. But as far as just like the best of the best, or not just my best memories, but stuff that I would still replay, I think it was just like it knocked it out of the park. That's not a controversial opinion, and I know that too.
Yeah, no. I mean, it does feel like this is like the place where, not controversial opinions, but like the Dreamcast, the GameCube, those are the ones that people will typically throw out. That early disc era, right? This era where it felt like once we got past cartridges, video game development on like a mass publishing scale became so much cheaper because discs individually are just so cheap to print. And it's this fascinating like 15-year pre-digital era where we're just able to put out so many small titles for but like Deadly Premonition, for example, that was a $20 game at launch. That game didn't become cheap. It was day one. You bought that game brand new, $20. There was just like this market for a smaller game, and that could just come out at the same time as a massive game and fit in the same form factor.
Yeah, and shout out to maybe my favorite GameCube game, Killer 7.
Yeah.
Suda51 and Swery were working on a game together. Swery being like the lead of Deadly Premonition, and Suda being the guy who did Killer 7 and No More Heroes and stuff. So like the two, like quote unquote, like wacky Japanese devs are like working on something together. It's really exciting.
The number guys, they're going to be 118 together or whatever.
Yeah.
I hope I did that math right. I just threw the number out there. Yeah, so you threw out Mouthwashing as an example of a recent game that you played. What else have you been playing lately?
Last month I got COVID for the first time and I got pretty sick. I'm not sick anymore, but I'm still kind of getting over it. And I wanted something really like, I hope I don't upset anyone saying this, but I wanted something like really dumb and very easy and like frictionless to play. So I was replaying Fallout 4.
How dare you? I'm kidding.
which I played on release, but like last year or the year before, I played New Vegas for the first time.
Hell yeah.
And it became my favorite game. Like I had never, and people, I read so much discourse or just fans arguing with each other, and people say, it's like, oh, it's just nostalgia for New Vegas, that's why you like it more. It's like, no, I played it like 10 years after I played Fallout 4, and I fell off the other games, but like, I just think, I haven't beaten it yet. I still have some DLC in the very end of it, but it's just like so brilliantly written, and Fallout 4 is much more frictionless and has like a sort of a denser world, but I like New Vegas a lot more, even though I'm playing both of them kind of concurrently, and I'm playing more Stardew Valley, and I just picked up Balatro for the first time recently.
I'm sorry, and also congratulations.
I really like it. I think a lot of what, especially it's clear in the like New Vegas versus Fallout 4 comparison, I'm much more drawn to games thanks to story or like narrative or like interesting characters, although I do like good gameplay mechanics. So I really like Balatro, but there's no story. So I feel less compelled to like, it doesn't have its hooks in me the way it does a lot of my friends. Even though I like roguelikes and I like it a lot, but I can play it for like 30 minutes and put it down.
For sure. I'm a guy who's always talking about the artistic value of video games as a medium and expression and how it's like able to communicate story through interaction, but also like the great appeal of video games is that interactive portion. And with games like Balatro mainlining that experience, I'm giving like a more artistic like explanation for why I had this thing as my second screen for like a really rough month. And
it's great though.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's awesome. It's great. It ruined my life. I mean, it was more of like it saved me during a rough patch, but like it was also like, man, God, the hours, Shannon. But going back to New Vegas there, that was the second episode of the show that I did. This is a game that has like resonated with people, like different people from like, it's not just trans people, guys. It's like I've talked to people from everywhere and they'd like talk that one up specifically. And you said this is like, you played this for the first time last year?
Yeah, last year or the year before. I got it at the cheap Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have Game Pass and it was like on Game Pass.
Yeah. I remember playing that for the first time on a laptop begging me to put it down back in 2015. And it was just, I was doing that my sophomore year of college. I loved it then. And it runs as good on my current generation computer as it did on that. And I love it. I wouldn't change a thing about it.
Yeah. That and Disco Elysium are the only two games. I mean, there are like much shorter games or like smaller, like more independent games where I really really appreciated the writing, like character writing and the way that like different factions interact and the complexity of what you can do as a character. I mean, I haven't played like every RPG, especially Western RPGs, but just like New Vegas and like the way you can tailor every single little thing and how much control you have over the world is so amazing. And then I play Fallout 4 and it's like, well, there are people here and I can interact with them, but it doesn't feel nearly as like tangible, even though New Vegas looks and runs so terribly.
Yeah. I mean, like famously, they had to get a modder to work on the game to teach them how to use the engine. And they only had like a year, if that, to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it came out and they did not get a bonus that they were going to get if they reached a certain Metacritic score. And it's like they were screwed from the jump. They didn't know how to develop the engine. And I'm sorry, it just became one of the greatest games of all time anyway. But God, what a fortune fire story.
Mm-hmm.
Which would be the perfect segue to talk about Deadly Premonition, but I'm not done yet. Before we talk about the game that you picked, I do want to explore more of the games that are Shannon core. You threw out a few games as an example of ones that you would want to talk about for the show. I want to give you some space to talk about that. So what are some of your other faves?
Oh, definitely Silent Hill 2. That was my favorite game for like 20 years before I picked up New Vegas.
So you played that when you were like 10 years old?
Yeah, well, did it come out in 2001, right?
Yeah.
So I could have first played it when I was like 11 or 12 when my cousin had it, I think. Then when I was like maybe late middle school, early high school, I would play it with my cousin and my brother. And I was the oldest out of them, so I would be like the brave one who was playing it in the dark at grandma's house or whatever, circa like 2005. I also really liked the Telltale Sam & Max games a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I like a lot of more comedy-centric games and point-and-click adventure games. Out of all the platformers I was really into, I think Tomba is the most interesting one, but known as like Tombi, I think in the UK and Europe. Just like a very bizarre, creative story where you play like a little pink-haired Tarzan boy and you have to capture evil pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love the music in that. Again, I really like Killer 7. I like Suda 5-1. I think I really like games that swing for the fences more than graphical realism or even like gameplay mechanics. Like you were talking about how Balatro helped you in a difficult time. Persona 4 was that game for me. Like in 2010 and 2015 were both like really bad years for me. So I had played Persona 4 and I replayed it in 2015 and still loved it. And I played most of Persona 5. I kind of fell off at the end. And I really liked it, but like Persona 5 is so much more aesthetically beautiful and slick, and it has much better gameplay. But I think 4's story is like a lot better and the characters are better, so I'm like way more married to that. And I played Metaphor too. I haven't beaten it either, but I really like those Atlas JRPGs.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to do anything for 100 hours. That's the big... I joked. I basically verbally committed to finally playing a Persona game when I became unemployed. And I became unemployed last year, and I still somehow didn't have time to play Persona 5. I've owned this game since 2020. I got the Royal version on sale. It's the Steelbook edition. I've had like 4 moves, and I've lost my job twice, and I still haven't played this game. And now I'm employed again. So what the hell? I guess I'll never play this game again. But I will play it.
Like I said, I mean, 5 is really fun. And I'm a big Lupin fan, so like it borrows a lot from the anime Lupin the Third. Like there are a lot of direct references to it. But I think 4 is a much better game just because the story is so much more compelling and like a little bit more mature. But yeah, that's sort of a side tangent. I used to, when I was in college, I would play Team Fortress 2 with my friends, my online friends. I cosplayed the sniper at like one of my first conventions I ever went to.
One of my most played games ever.
I have like 250 hours on it or something. Yeah, and then a million different little weird independent games. I remember there was this game called Lake of Roaches I really liked. That was just like a sort of like a really weird black and white sort of PS1 graphic, tiny amateur like art, like outsider art type game I really liked. But yeah, I have always, even ever since I was little, I've been drawn to horror and to sort of like absurdist comedy and to anything that had either a compelling story or was just like fun to play. I really like Binding of Isaac, and I love Tetris. I used to have like a little Tetris game that I would play like for hours, and they have the Tetris effect when I close my eyes.
Yeah. Going back to Silent Hill 2, this is a game that to this day I haven't played, and it's not because I'm scared. I would love to play it. Accessibility certainly has been an issue, and as much praise as the Bloober Team remake has gotten, I just feel like I have to play the original first because that just is the one that's the one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to, legally I cannot say this, but like I know that I could run PS2 games on this computer perfectly fine, and I just need to pull the trigger on it and play it because it's like the biggest, like it's one of the biggest blind spots in my video game journey so far. What about Silent Hill 2 has made it your favorite game for basically your whole life?
Some of it, I mean, this came after I'd already played it, but when around like 2005, that period of my life, I had like a lot of family members die, and it's like not worth getting. It's like a bummer topic, but like I went through some very traumatic stuff, lost a lot of people, and the game is kind of it's a representation of like guilt. All the Silent Hill, it's like you feel bad, and so you're in this like horrible town, and it's like you're suffering or you're like being punished for things that you've done, and some of that really resonated with me. And I think Yahtzee Croshaw said something similar about Silent Hill 2, but about anxiety. Like he has like severe, or had when he said this, like severe anxiety. And the game world kind of reflected how he always felt. So it was kind of like comforting in that way. And I don't think he and I have the same like life experience, but it was also to me, it's like, this is a game that has such like a beautiful, tragic, oppressive atmosphere. It's so weird. The original English voice actors are kind of like stilted and strange, but it just kind of adds to the uncanny effect of it. It's just like a really incredibly written game as well. Not necessarily the dialogue, but just like thematically what's really going on during the game and like how many shocking, memorable moments come out of it without needing, I love horror movies. I'm fine with like horrific gore, but it's not like a jump scare game or a gory game. It's like you get a radio at the beginning of the game, and if you leave it on, you hear static, and like the louder the static gets, the closer you are to a monster, even though you can't see it. And I'm sure, this is like 20 plus years ago. I'm sure other games have incorporated a lot of its mechanics better. But for me, playing it in middle school, it was like, wow. And it was something that was just like, oh, this is intended for grown-ups. It's like mature, and as I get older, I can appreciate some of it more. And I'm like a big hater of the Silent Hill movie, or movies or whatever. Because like Pyramid Head is a character who is a manifestation of James's, like the main character's like guilt and issues over not being there for his wife who died and blah, blah, blah. And it just became a mascot character over time. Or like they would some people like take the sexual violence aspects of it, which are done very like respectfully and seriously, and make it like a meme or just gratuitous. And it's like very strange. It's like, no, they did it right. And I hate how many times it's been redone and kind of trashed. But I have not played the Bloober Team remake. I'm just not interested in it. I have heard good things about it, but I'm like, why? I would just replay the original.
Right. It's a thing where I don't resent the existence of a remake. There are certainly there are cases for it to be made, and like it's, I get it. Not everything is for everybody, and if somebody gets to experience a form of a story somehow, that is a net win. But this is a major aspect of this podcast: preservation and accessibility for monumental works, or just all video games, as many as possible. they should be made readily available. And there is no easy, readily available way to access Silent Hill 2, the original version. And that's just unfortunate because it is like beyond like its actual cultural impact and like the artistic value that it brings. Like you have this emotional connection to this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and people should be able to play that without having to learn how to emulate. Now, that's obviously an option, and it's like PS2 emulation has gotten better over the years, but that shouldn't be like the thing. People should be able to like just play it on their TV without having to do all this shit.
It's really unfortunate. I still have my copy from like 20 years ago and a working
Wow.
PS2, but aren't they like hundreds of dollars? Or it's very expensive, right?
Yeah,
To
they're
try
very
to get.
valuable. Like
Mhm.
just all Silent Hill games, like even like the ones that aren't as good are super expensive. I empathize with like this thing becoming a mascot or whatever, and it's the unfortunate part of Silent Hill 2, and the most significant part, it is a video game. That's the best part of it, and that's the most unfortunate part of it because the video game culture surrounding it. And obviously, this is all aspects of capitalism, how like things with artistic meaning get subsumed into capital. And Pyramid Head being a representation of a very specific and very dark, morbid thing. It's strange, right? It's like how like I sort of bristle when somebody gets like a little too jokey about like Laura Palmer
Mm.
or recently, and like that shades of that with like the Nosferatu movie that came out recently, people like getting too like you must bounce on it thing with like
Mhm.
I'm like, all right, because like this is about a thing, and it's just I can be a bit of a fuddy duddy with this shit. It's the same thing where it's like if people are like a little too horny for Makima Chainsaw Man, I'm like, come on, guys. Dingy means so much to me, but that's not the point. I get what you mean here. Unfortunately, something becomes popular enough, and you have to feel a little protective of its like meaning because like other people aren't.
Well, it's also people who don't even interact with the art. This is a total side tangent, but I like read part 1 of Chainsaw Man and some of part 2, and I really like that, and I really like the
Yeah.
anime. And there was a lot, I
Mhm.
mean, discourse is always stupid, but there was a lot of discourse about like it being just another like horny anime character, or it was like gross or like
No.
underage sexuality. It's like it's about real. It's like, about like abuse and about it's like a natural. It's like that's how teenage boys are. It's okay to realistically like represent someone's experience, and it's not like inherently exploitative. It's like a mature work, but none of these people were actually reading it. So
No, yeah. It's about a kid who has like been neglected and is materially deprived, and like the hole he's going to fall down when somebody gives him a crumb,
yeah.
just a crumb and a paycheck. Like the things that somebody's going to do. It's a cautionary tale. It's like maybe in terms of like masculinity, I think it is maybe one like I think that overall Chainsaw Man is just like a really good work about grief and trauma and pain. It's one of my favorite works of the 21st century, but it's
Mhm.
specifically about how it is able to speak to this whole like, the male loneliness epidemic just sort of being like there's just a broad sense of cultural isolation, but the male aspect of it is the thing getting more attention.
Mhm.
Yes, we are all lonely, and that is an actual like cultural malaise. Here is a character that does actually embody the masculine and is also deeply lonely, and how like isolating that all is, and then people being flippant about it or
Mhm.
doing fucking South Park nice jokes over and over again, or just flagrantly missing the point. We could do 2 hours on this.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode. Wait till they make
Yeah.
it. Have they made a Chainsaw Man video game?
I think there's one in development. I have no idea how that would be.
Yeah, I don't. Hopefully, it's good.
Like I can see like them doing like the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm, Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi thing with it, but it's like there's so many like weird like little interesting things that you could do with something like that. Like
Mhm.
you could do some like weird like Persona style day by day sort of thing with it. There's lots of approaches there. You're also a fan of the video game Alan Wake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this also one that you got to recently?
No, I played Alan Wake on release, I think, or
Yeah.
around release on my cousin's, 'cause I'm pretty close with one of my cousins, and we used to live with each other and stuff. We like more like sibling, type relationship. So with her and my brother, we played the first Alan Wake, probably on release. Then it was over COVID or whenever I got the Xbox that I played, the DLC for Alan Wake 1 and American Nightmare, which I thought was really interesting. And
Mhm.
then I started Control, and I haven't beaten it or played Alan Wake 2. because I started New Vegas and got obsessed with it. So I actually, even despite being like on board, although I have a lot of caveats on it for the original Alan Wake, especially having just replayed it. I still haven't played 2, but I've heard it's amazing and it's like awesome. My friend Peebs loves it and has like done speed running of it, I think, but I just haven't made time.
Yeah, no, I had Alan Wake on my show help me with a fucking Game of the Year episode, and I haven't played Alan Wake 2, and I technically owe that guy a favor. So it's weird. I haven't played Alan Wake's American Skateland either. Here's the thing, like, you talk about a game that's scrappy. I mean, we are about to talk about a fucking scrappy game from 2010, aren't we? Fallout New Vegas, Alan Wake, Deadly Premonition. What a year. Alan Wake is a game where it's like, how you play it and how I feel about it are 2 completely different conversations.
In what way?
The gameplay itself, and this is something I'm going to mention a lot with Deadly Premonition, like the gameplay itself almost feels like a parody, but the actual, like, especially during the time I played it, because I played the remaster near the end of 2023 when I was just having like a weird like crisis of self. We all get those at the end of the year, don't we, guys? But it's like I was playing that, and it's like this guy who's like basically has the power of God, which is the act of creation, but he's so depressed that he cannot be God, but is also like a bit full of himself. So he's not like he's a hack. The best part of Alan Wake is he's kind of a hack, but he's also God, and he's also depressed, and he hates himself, and he's also kind of full of himself. And it's that kind of shit where I love that. And the fact that it is also like, all right, now point the flashlight at the shadow, now shoot the shadow, now point the flashlight at the shadow, now shoot the shadow. And the whole time he's like, God, it fucking sucks. I don't know if I'm God or not. Yeah, I love it.
One of the 2 DLCs for the first game, the gameplay was just atrocious. I don't remember which one it was. I played them both recently. There was like some boss where you have to fight a bunch of stuff in a warehouse, and it was just so
I did that one.
I've never gotten into FromSoft games. I think I would enjoy them. I just haven't made time. I like some level of challenge. I play most stuff on like normal or hard. I don't know. I think I was playing Alan Wake on hard maybe, and then got to that and put it on easy and just felt so upset that it was just like a very unpleasant, very frustrating, unrewarding experience. But the first Alan Wake, I think there are parts of it that take itself too seriously, especially if we're comparing it to Deadly Premonition. And the story of like his wife has been kidnapped or something. It's almost
or something.
Like she's somewhere, his hot wife is gone, and she was really nice. It's like she has no development that I can recall. She's just kind of like a boring, which you could say about Silent Hill 2 as well, but like in Silent Hill 2, you meet like your dead wife is named Mary, and you meet this like really hot lady named Maria, and it's like she looks just like her, but his wife is dead, and like really interesting like Madonna horror stuff and psychoanalysis on James is like a straight guy, whereas Alan Wake is like, I gotta find my wife, she's nice and I'm an asshole. Like I liked his comedic relief manager best friend. Is it Barry? Is that his name?
Barry, yeah.
I liked him a lot. And I love when those games have a sense of humor, like the little Twilight Zone vignettes, some other like self-referential elements, or like seeing a literal log lady in the diner. There were a lot of things I found very endearing about it when I played it and when I replayed it. And American Nightmare is really interesting because the guy who is like the main villain of Alan Wake 2, like Mr. Scratch or whatever, like evil Alan Wake, he's homoerotically taunting Alan the entire time. It's like a very intense, campy, he's like killing people on these pre-recorded messages and then like flirting with him really aggressively in American Nightmare. And as I understand it, that's Alan Wake 2 doesn't have that element. I thought it was like a really cool, weird departure. And that game is much more like Evil Dead 2, saturated colors, like campy, fun. I would recommend playing it, but yeah. And I think when I replayed Alan Wake recently, it just made me want to play Deadly Premonition. I was like, I wish I was playing Deadly Premonition right now, even though Deadly Premonition is way more broken.
Well, this is embarrassing to say now, but I did manage to call Alan, and he agreed to do like a $5 with us, and he heard all of that. Is Alan? You wanna? Out from the shadows emerges a singular figure, one of the great writers of our time, not a hack. For this moment only, the parasocial meets the paranormal. My name is Alan Wake. I'm a writer. So, 1, keep my wife's name out of your fucking mouth.
I'm sorry. I didn't say she was. I said she was nice.
I miss her so fucking much. It has been 15 goddamn years, Shannon.
What was she in the lake? I don't remember. She was in Cauldron Lake.
I'm in the lake, I think.
You're in
I
the
don't
lake?
know.
Are you not in the lake?
It's called the Dark Place, and the lake is dark. Listen, if I could find her, I would.
Oh, she seemed really cool. She had that light switch too. That was cool. That came in handy.
Yeah, she gave me the light switch, but I also had the light switch to hold. I don't know how my own powers work. All right, it's hard. It is hard doing this shit.
I can only imagine. I've heard your second game is really good. I know it won like Game of the Year, and they had like a musical number that I don't know what it was because I'm avoiding spoilers, but it sounds really good.
Oh, so you can't tell me, and he can't tell me. This whole thing is disrespect. I don't know why I agreed to do this. I don't.
Alan Wake, I have a question.
You can go for it.
Have you played Deadly Premonition?
So, this game has been a huge pain in my ass because anytime people talk about Alan Wake, I've been in a dark place. I don't get to participate in society. I haven't known who's won the Super Bowl for the last. Do you know what the last album I listened to was?
What?
My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I bought that before I fell into the dark place. How is that guy doing?
Don't look him up.
What did something bad happen?
You don't want to know.
Okay, but he really felt like he was like had some momentum. Like he's on a career high. I really relate to that whole like narcissistic hating myself element. It was a big hype up album for me. But the point is, I don't know what culture has happened. But every time people talk about me, I get the Google alert for it because I have to type my way out of this fucking place somehow. Mm-hmm. And every single time I get a Google alert, like Deadly Premonition is within 2 sentences of it. And that's just really fucking annoying because like he's an FBI agent. I'm a writer. I don't understand why people I don't see the similarities. You tell me.
Alan, have you seen Twin Peaks?
I don't want to talk about it.
Well, both games are, survival horror games with quirky characters, heavily influenced by American media. You seem to be more Stephen King and Twilight Zone influence.
Thank you.
Yes. Whereas Swery was more into Twin Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
York and you are different as protagonists.
Thank you.
You're a very skilled writer.
Thank you.
York is a very like charismatic, fun to watch, really engaging, interesting main character.
This interview's over. Later, dickholes.
I'm sorry about that. I would have made cracks about his missing wife if I'd known he was coming on.
He might not ever come back, or he'll insist on coming back every episode now. I don't know if I've set a precedent or what, but thank you for getting rid of him.
Okay, I almost said York is way more charming than you are. Then I was like, I shouldn't say that.
No, you kind of implied it by like saying like he was a writer and then York was an interesting and engaging person.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a writer. He can read between the lines,
Oh, true. Subtext. Yeah.
Yeah. He is, I can look out the window right now because he's walking away as he's about to go back into the dark place. He's trying to find a shadow or some shit. He heard that. He's kicking himself for not saying it first. I can literally see him kicking himself.
Mm-hmm. Hope he finds some flares.
Yeah. Speaking of 2010 games where you can use a flare, let's talk about the game that we ultimately decided to talk about today, Deadly Premonition. Deadly Premonition is an open-world survival horror game developed by Japanese developer Access Games. It was directed and designed by Hidetaka Suehiro, better known as Swery65, who also worked on cult titles like Spy Fiction, D4 Dark Dreams Don't Die, and The Missing. It's important to point out that Deadly Premonition is not the product of one single man. It had a total staff of 48 people, and it was developed over a tumultuous 5-year period. Much of the information about this development I'm about to share was sourced by a very interesting and very candid post-mortem from the August 2010 issue of Game Developer magazine. This post-mortem can be found on the Deadly Premonition fan site shshatteredmemories.com/greenvale, and the entire Game Developer Magazine archive can also be found on gdcvault.com. I've included links for both of these in the description of this episode. Deadly Premonition initially began development in 2004 with the working title Rainy Woods, and was intended to be a PlayStation 2 game before pivoting to the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Issues with the much more advanced hardware led to them canceling the title shortly after its first trailer premiered at the Tokyo Game Show in 2007. Swery rebooted the project in 2008, changing the title to Deadly Premonition and combining the assets from the old title into a new game design. According to Swery, Deadly Premonition was nearly canceled 4 times. Swery's guiding concepts during development were real time, real scale, real life. The dev team went so far as to travel to the US to get an accurate sense of scale for a town, down to the width measurements for billboards and roads. To create a sense of reality, all of the NPCs in the town follow a daily routine the player has to work around as they traverse the open world. A variety of sim management mechanics were also implemented into the game. All vehicles in the game have a limited amount of gas that needs to be refilled at a gas station. The player character, FBI Special Agent Francis York Morgan, needs to eat and sleep, can grow facial hair that he can shave, and he must change his clothes regularly before they begin to stink. Creating a simulated reality was a bigger priority than creating an action game. Swery believed that giving the player freedom to abandon the main quest to explore an area with unique characters is vital. Earlier versions of the game had no combat. Combat was the last thing added to the game, and it was done at the request of a publisher who expressed concerns that the game would not sell well in Western markets if it didn't have guns. Other people who worked on Deadly Premonition include Hitoshi Okamoto, who served as the game's art director. Recently, he has worked on titles like Street Fighter VI and Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince. Hideki Kataoka was the game's lead programmer. Kataoka candidly admitted that the opportunity of working with next-gen tech, referring to the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, made them overconfident with the vast amount of RAM available to them, which led to massive issues with memory allocation and processing speed. The constant optimization of code led to a huge loss of development time. The programmers also struggled with lighting and shadow processing. Part of Deadly Premonition's reputation is the variety of performance issues that it has, and reading about it and seeing the cause of these performance issues was illuminating to me. This is something that the developers were acutely aware of, and it is impressive that any version of the game came out, and it is really wonderful that it has a cult following despite the performance issues. Morihiro Iwamoto served as the game's sound designer. Its soundtrack was composed by Ryu Kinugasa, Takuya Kobayashi, and Hiromi Mizutani. Access Games didn't have their own sound department, so the sound effects were entrusted to an outside partner. This is why the game is famously rife with stock sound effects. Access Games had just 2 weeks to record over 6,000 lines of voice work at Webtone Studio, which was then in San Jose, California. To help with the process, the voice actors were given extensive character biographies and concept art. Swery would occasionally get in the booth to perform lines for the voice actors when he had trouble getting his point across. Jeff Kramer, who played the game's lead, FBI Special Agent Francis York Morgan, had to record about 3,000 lines of dialogue over the course of 5 days. Swery co-wrote the game alongside his close friend and independent filmmaker Kenji Goda. Many of the conversations York had about real-world films are based on actual conversations that the two had. As for the game's story, the game opens with an elderly man taking a walk in the woods with his twin 6-year-old grandsons, who discover the body of 18-year-old Anna Graham tied to a tree in a crucifixion pose. The gruesome manner of the killing and the presence of strange red seeds on or around the body attracts the attention of the FBI as it matches the MO of a series of murders across the country. This brings us to FBI Special Agent Francis York Morgan, who insists that he just be called York as that's what everybody does.
FBI Special Agent Francis York Morgan. Please, just call me York. That's what everyone calls me.
Agent York?
Good, that's good.
We're introduced to York while he's dreaming of a supernatural realm called the Red Room, where 2 entities who look like the twins who just found the body give York cryptic clues about the case. I wonder what this is. Immediately after this dream sequence, we see York driving through a thunderstorm on the way to Greenville, Washington to investigate the murder of Anna Graham. Sorry, anagram. They're trying to give you some what do you mean anagram? He's on the way to Greenville to investigate the murder. He's talking on the phone and looking at case photos on his laptop while also speeding down the highway.
And he's smoking, right?
We'll get there.
Okay, my bad.
Listen, they both need each other. It's called interdependency, and they both know it. Yeah, I know. He does terrible things to Tom. Nasty, even sadistic things. But that's fine, as long as that's what Tom wants. Think about it. His actions. He's always asking for it. It's his partner's job to fulfill that need, and Jerry knows that. Proof? Well, in the Tom and Jerry show, they live with each other. Hello? Hello?
York's phone combo, where he's arguing that Tom and Jerry are in a consensual sadomasochistic relationship, is interrupted when he loses his cell phone signal. York, who is deathly allergic to having a normal one, then strikes up a conversation with an unseen person he refers to as Zach. And while talking to this Zach, he moves to light a cigarette and suddenly veers off the road and crashes in the woods. Of course, unfazed, York proceeds on foot through the forest where he runs into strange zombie-like creatures who attack him on sight, again allergic to having a normal one. York shoots his way out of the forest, but not before being attacked by a dark figure in a red raincoat who attacks him with an axe. After York dodges the attack, the raincoat killer taunts him and runs off. York finally gets out of the woods and walks along the road until he gets to a bridge where he meets Deputy Sheriff Emily Wyatt and Sheriff George Woodman. They don't make a good first impression with one another, as they find York very strange, I wonder why, and York finds them primitive and naive, but they're forced to work together so they can solve Anna Graham's murder. Shenanigans ensue. As York, the player must get to know the residents of the town and their schedules in order to find out who is murdering the beautiful women of Greenvale. Every major character has a set schedule or routine that they carry out. People will use Shenmue as an example. There's a whole daytime cycle. Every minute is about 20 seconds of real world time. Basically, like, you are building a relationship with this town that's had this horrible thing happen to them and is continuing to happen to them. Not unlike a certain television show from the 90s that evidently was an influence on it. Deadly Premonition was originally released for Xbox 360 on February 23rd, 2010, the day before Twin Peaks Day. February 24th was the day that Dale Cooper drove into Twin Peaks. Other games released in 2010 include Alan Wake, Amnesia: The Dark Descent, Halo Reach, Heavy Rain, Limbo, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, Metro 2033, Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Red Dead Redemption, Super Mario Galaxy 2, Rock Band 3, Super Street Fighter 4, Civilization 5, Final Fantasy 13, Fallout New Vegas, which I previously covered on the show with Will Lepper, and Mass Effect 2, which I previously covered on the show with Maddie K. Big year. Have you played any of these games? I know we mentioned a couple already.
Oh yeah, I played the first two Mass Effects. I played Red Dead Redemption. I don't know if I beat it. I was just thinking how funny it is to compare like the aesthetic of Red Dead Redemption with Deadly Premonition, because Deadly Premonition is also pretty ugly.
Red Dead Premonition?
Red Dead Premonition.
Yeah.
I played Amnesia, at least some of it. Not sure, not a ton of those games. Didn't play the Pokemon games, didn't play Halo. I liked but again with Mass Effect, I really liked exploring different planets and talking to other races and those stories, and I didn't care about like the combat or.
You like games where you walk around and talk to people, and then sometimes you shoot a gun.
Yeah, or I like the combat in New Vegas. Weirdly, I like specking out to do like a shotgun build is really fun and like how that works. But I care more about the story.
But the thing is, like, the first two Mass Effect games, people aren't playing those for the actual Rudy Tooty aim and shooty. They're doing it because they like talking to people.
Yeah, this alien talks slow. It's really funny. I like this. Yeah, that was my experience with that.
Yeah. The gameplay in 2 is significantly better, don't get me wrong, but it is like, I'm here to talk to people. I'm here because I love Garrus and his weird Punisher liberal bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 2010, hell of a year for video games. And you've spoken to the type of video games that you like. What speaks to you about Deadly Premonition?
It is such an endearing game. And it's similar to Silent Hill 2. There are elements of it where its flaws just make it more endearing. There is a limit because it can be very broken. But like you're describing the intro to the game, and when York gets in the car accident, there's two squirrels in front of him and they make chimp noises.
Yeah, like not chipmunk noises.
No.
They make monkey
They
noises.
make monkey noises, and it's hysterical. The conversation is already funny and strange and like inappropriate, and he's already using a laptop while driving. While this gruesome, as you said, like gruesome murder is happening.
It's like that I think you should leave bit where they're learning the rules of the road. That's what is the first scene of Deadly Premonition.
I think the moment that I was so sold on the game is when it's towards the beginning when you're going through like the sheriff's station and Thomas asks you to bring him a squirrel key. He's like, get the squirrel key so I can get into this place. And you bring him one and he's like, no, obviously I want the red tail squirrel. Like you go on this like 20-minute quest and he keeps getting mad at you and telling you that you have like the wrong squirrel key. And to me, it was almost like Story of Everest. It was just like hysterical. And I'm like, is it going to be this one? Is it going to be this one? There's so much sincere heart put into the game. Like York is probably, I mean, a lot of fans have talked about how he's like a little bit autistic coded and loves his B movies and loves his like cinema and just talking about it and is so enthusiastic and so passionate. The same way Dale Cooper is.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many unforgettable set pieces and scenes. Like the one I link people is the Sinner's Sandwich.
Yeah.
Which is just like a weird, a rich man in a wheelchair with a gas mask on and his servant who talks in rhymes describe a sandwich that people eat to punish themselves. It's just of a scene.
Here you go. The usual. 1 turkey, strawberry jam, and cereal sandwich.
Sounds like the sinner's sandwich. Self-inflicted punishment to atone for past sins. He's setting an example.
Mr. Francis York Morgan, you should try this wonderful lunch. It's more than a delicious, tasty crunch. So says Mr. Stewart.
No, that's fine. I've just ordered my own lunch.
And there are a lot of really interesting cross-cultural elements where it was made by like a Japanese team. It's set in the US, but there are a lot of Japanese cultural tropes like the long-haired ghosts that crawl the walls, or even like an old lady, the hotel, like innkeeper lady who's always bent over. She looks like an old lady from an anime.
Mm-hmm.
Or women, when they like giggle, cover their mouths. There are a lot of things that's like, this wouldn't happen in America that kind of like add an interesting dimension to it, to me.
Yeah, the way the body language especially is very Japanese. The way that like characters will throw both of their hands up in the air and when they shrug, or specifically like the motion that York does the most, where he's like tapping on his chest.
Oh yeah.
Like that would be like plausible deniability to like, oh, he's just one specific individual. But Emily will do it all the time too when she's thinking. I mean, like it is very much trying to imitate America, and in some ways have commentary about small town American living, and has this like cultural fascination with it, but also like it gets these details either weirdly wrong or it's just embracing the Japanese aspects of it. But there was like one specific bit that made me laugh really hard, which was when you're in the police station, they have like the sink in the kitchen, and that is like not an American sink. Like it's just like, oh, okay, that's not how we have sinks here in America, but it's just like those little bits that like, is it intentionality or is it just like they didn't know? But either way, I find it very endearing, and it's part of what makes this game so singular, despite it being explicitly Twin Peaks influenced in the way that many other video games are obviously Twin Peaks influenced, but this one's just sort of like, no, we're not cutting it with something else, buddy. It's Twin Peaks.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of my favorite, not all of my favorite, but like my favorite anime and manga, like Lupin the Third, like I mentioned, like One Piece, also have a pretty big Western influence.
Yeah.
And I think I've always just enjoyed seeing where those two things, like two very different, or not just like the West isn't one culture, but like very different cultural backgrounds meeting. And as like, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but like Deadly Premonition 2 is set in the South, and I'm from Atlanta. Like my family is very Southern, and that one gets a lot more wrong in worse ways. When Swery is trying to comment on like race relations or whatever, it's like, ugh. There's none of that in Deadly Premonition.
Yeah, like I'm glad I haven't gone to, because I am also a boy from the South. My family is from Nolens.
Wow.
I currently live in Savannah, Georgia. I'm from Virginia I've lived in the South my entire life, so it's like I would definitely have an opinion of someone who didn't live here trying to like say something about Louisiana.
Yeah. Deadly Premonition 2 is trying to be True Detective
Yeah.
instead of Twin Peaks.
Deadly Premonition 2 is set in 2005, right?
It's a prequel.
Yeah, like I think that one's either set in 2005 or this game's set in 2005, but 2005 is a very fucking strong year to do a thing set in not New Orleans is all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like just my personal experience talking about this particular game, I find most of its like American stuff more endearing than I do find it like troublesome. Not to say that there are zero prickly bits to this game, but like the cultural exchange happening here through pop culture is super fascinating.
And like I said, it's very sincere. It so goes 110% even when it shouldn't, or even when they really didn't have the budget or didn't have the means to do it. Like you were talking about the way that I cannot imagine the complexity of trying to build out a world where everyone is on a set schedule and everyone has not even just like everyone has their own dialogue and personalities and side quests, but also, yeah, they have their routes that they take. And today, prepping for this, I was watching like sort of, it was mostly a plot recap, but sort of a video essay about Deadly Premonition.
Yeah.
And there were things in it that the guy talked about that was foreshadowing. I never noticed. And I've played this game multiple times over the past 15 years. I was like, oh, if you look at where this person goes at this point, then you'll kind of understand this. And so much like, so it made the world, even though it's so broken and ugly, it like New Vegas, it feels more real. It feels more tangible. Like when you go around and you talk to these people, it feels very lived in. Playing other games, it would like bother me if it was midnight and someone is like running their shop. It's like they're not a real person. They wouldn't be at their shop. I know it's more convenient for me as the player if they're there, but it like kind of it's one of those things that can take me out of it a little bit.
Right.
Versus the sort of verisimilitude or the of something like Deadly Premonition.
Right.
And it does have a strong aesthetic with the red seeds and the red like tree thing. And I don't want to go into spoilers, but there was a lot of thought put into like the iconography of the game. And it's not all just Twin Peaks. It mostly is, but there is definitely its own like fan art of it. You can like, even if it doesn't show York, you would be able to tell like, oh, this person's thinking of Deadly Premonition.
Yeah, of course. It is like a thing where if you are trying to fully get this game, like you cannot divorce it from Twin Peaks, but that doesn't mean it is exclusively that.
Yeah.
It is sort of transformative in how it ends up and shapes out. And like especially by the last couple chapters of the game, you kind of forget about the Twin Peaksy stuff as it sort of like has its own take on like this mystery in this particular setting. Let's go back in time a little bit. When did you first play this game?
I have no idea how I heard about it. Because I watched G4 when I was younger and got a lot of like game reviews from that. But this would have been after that was off the air or after I wasn't watching it. But I was at a GameStop or something, or like a local game store, and there was an Xbox 360 version of it for like $10. So I got it for my brother, and we played it together on his 360. And immediately fell in love with it. So both of us have like a pretty similar sense of humor and grew up watching the same things. I love dark comedy and absurdist comedy, and Deadly Premonition has a ton of that mixed with this like really silly, lighthearted, like almost whimsy, especially in York. It was probably a few years after it came out, but it was a long time ago. And then I've played it. I tried to play it on my laptop. I own it for Switch as well. I don't know how many copies of this game I have. But I replayed it more recently, maybe a little bit before COVID on the Switch as well.
Yeah. You know what? This is actually a really good time to transition into accessibility and preservation in a segment I do every episode called No Country for Old Games. Let's talk about how readily available this game is so people who want to play Deadly Premonition know where they can find it. Of course, the subject of video game preservation means a great deal to me because I believe video games are an art form and create experiences that leave some kind of impact on the people who play them. We talked about this earlier with regards to Silent Hill 2. This means very little to publishers, unfortunately, who have struggled historically with keeping their older games on modern hardware. And as time goes on, games that were once easily readily available become more and more difficult to purchase, play, or acquire. Now, we're going to rate today's game on a scale of A to ARG, and ARG is obviously an expression of frustration. It is not me covertly advocating for piracy. That's illegal, and the FBI will arrest you or shoot you or something. Now, Deadly Premonition was originally released as a budget title for the Xbox 360 on February 23rd, 2010, once again, the day before Twin Peaks Day. You could buy a physical copy of the game for 20 bones. This version of the game is presently backwards compatible on the Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S as of 2017. And in Japan, this game was released for both Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 on March 11th of 2010. In 2013, Rising Star Games published Deadly Premonition, the director's cut for PlayStation 3 and Microsoft Windows in North America, Europe, and Australia. This was the first version released in Australia, as the publisher didn't believe it would meet the criteria for an MA15+ if they submitted it for classification. And then a Japanese version of the director's cut would be released in 2015. The director's cut features updated controls, updated HD visuals, removes the red and green color filters present in the original release. People generally say this is the version of the game that's easier to play, but it does also have its own technical issues, lower frame rate from the Xbox 360 version. And it also introduces a framing device where the story is told by an elderly man to his granddaughter. When a Switch version of the game titled Deadly Premonition Origins released in 2019, it kept most of the changes made in the director's cut, but completely removed that framing device because it contradicts stuff that happens in Deadly Premonition 2.
Mm-hmm.
This is all to say that various differences between versions means that there is no consensus definitive way to play Deadly Premonition. Some fans prefer the color filters of the Xbox 360 release and how it usually runs at a stable 30 frames per second, while others prefer the improved textures, resolution, and controls of subsequent releases, but also lament the unstable performance and glitches of them. The director's cut framing device now being considered non-canon makes the version on PC and PlayStation 3, also strange for that. And the PC version in general is also just a huge pain in the ass to get running, basically requiring at least one fan-made patch at minimum. There is pros to cons to every version. With that being said, Shannon, you mentioned that you have multiple versions of the game. Which one do you gravitate towards, or which one do you prefer?
If I was going to play one right now, it would just be the Switch version because it crashed a lot. I think it was my first Switch game that was crashing. I was like, why is this crashing so much? I would have played the original version first. And I guess I've barely played any of the director's cut because that was what I was trying to get working on my laptop in college, and it just wouldn't play. And I thought it was because my laptop was old, but I think it was because it's just a broken port.
No, when it crashes or when it's not running, that's the game's fault. It's not yours. I promise.
Mm-hmm. And the one that's would be the most nostalgic for me would be the 360 version, but the one that's the most fresh in my memory is the Origins versions that I bought in 2019 when 2 came out, or when 2 was announced. It was my opportunity to replay it. People have asked me which version to play, and to me, I get that to some people these are meaningful differences. I don't think overall they really impact your experience that much, as far as it's whatever is accessible to you. The Silent Hill 2 HD collection would be a terrible way to experience that game because it's they kind of gutted it. It's got Comic Sans and different voice actors and all this terrible shit. But with Deadly Premonition, it's just sort of get what you, I don't know. If it's on Game Pass or whatever, try that. Check the reviews and see if it's broken. Even though it says it's backwards compatible sometimes. Playing New Vegas on the Xbox Series S, it would crash a lot.
If you check the Xbox website, you can buy Deadly Premonition. I would personally advise against that, though, because as of the time of this episode's release, the BDS movement has designated Microsoft as a priority boycott target for their complicity in the apartheid and genocide of the Palestinian people. Microsoft has military contracts with the Israeli military and provides them with Azure Cloud and AI services that are helping to accelerate a genocide. Microsoft is knowingly profiting off of the extermination of human lives. They are active participants in a genocide. The Palestinian-led BDS movement is calling on us to put pressure on Microsoft by boycotting their products whenever possible. including their gaming services. Pressure needs to be put on Microsoft to terminate their contracts and partnerships with the Israeli military and government. Please do not give Microsoft your money. Free Palestine. Fuck Microsoft. Moving on. Normally, it's like this thing where it's like, God, there's like no version out there, or God, there's like one version out there and it's not the best way to play it, guys. I'm sorry. This one has 3 different versions that you can access pretty readily. Like, again, the PC version, good luck running it without downloading extra shit, but you can buy that's the director's cut version. You can play the PC version. The Switch version, that is probably the most accessible for the common person, and it is the director's cut stuff minus the framing device. And then you can play the original Xbox 360 version on a current generation Xbox device. You have 3 options actually, and I don't know if that makes it an A or an ARG or like something. It's definitely not an ARG. It's definitely not an ARG, but it is definitely like, is this an A? I don't know, because I'll be honest with you. I'll be a little honest with you. I own a PlayStation 3, and I played the PlayStation 3 version of this game, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
How did I play the PlayStation 3 version? I don't know. There's certain ways that you can get creative if you want a more smooth performance, no crash version of the game. And this is Deadly Premonition. Like, even if you have like the most optimal play experience, you're going to run into jank, because it is a low budget game with a hell of a lot of ambition, with a shooting mechanic that was grafted on because the producers demanded that there be violence in the game. Otherwise, people won't buy it. And then everyone who bought it said, man, this game would be much better if there wasn't mandatory shooting in it for at least half of it.
With the same like 3 sound effects cycling forever, with like no pitch shifting, the same groans and the same enemies. And it's
the same voice lines, the same enemies. There's like 3 enemies in the entire game. There's like, they add a 4th one pretty late, and it's not a fun one. And also, like, every time you kill something, you get a ka-ching sound effect every single time. That feels tasteless and kind of takes you out of it a little. And we'll get to that. The point is, much like the rest of this game, the availability is fucking absurd. So I'm going to give it an A for absurd. That's what I'm going to do for this one.
Which version did you? Oh, you played the PS3 version. Sorry, you said.
That I played the PlayStation 3 version, all right. So we'll move on. Usually when I transition into talking about the game after talking about the availability, I'm like, yeah, this game is important because it, like I talk about like the broad cultural, like, and it sold a lot and it was reviewed well, and neither of those are true. It sold like shit and it reviewed like, what the hell is this? Or, oh my God, this is like outsider art. And it's really going to come down to like a lot of personal taste and a lot of like being generous towards a lot of systems that were put in with varying degrees of enthusiasm. But this game, for the people who do love it, it means quite a bit to them. And I want to get to use this opportunity to get to know what it means to you specifically, Shannon. Let's do that.
Hey, Riley.
Yeah, Andrew?
Do you want to make a podcast ad?
I do, but what would we mention?
So I think that we could probably put together an ad for a show called The Podcast Minds. There, but for the grace of pod, go we. It's a podcast where we both pitch each other podcast ideas instead of doing one ourselves.
Yeah, it's a podcast pilot pitching project. Totally. We should mention that it's a comedy show, right? Where we throw out ideas like getting weirdly deep into the themes of Jumanji.
Is that one a podcast?
No. It's a podcast idea that is actually a front for me to talk to you about hyperfixations I got.
Oh, that's most of the things that you hit me with. What about instead if we just talked about all the different ways you could do a rewatch of Lost?
Oh, that sounds like you just did what I did, but you said it in a positive voice.
Okay, and along the way, what if we pitched ideas like, I don't know, Epic Rap Battles of Mystery, the Lin-Manuel Miranda podcast?
Listen to the Podcast Minds. There, but for the grace of pod, go we on your podcatcher of choice on the Moonshot Network. Hi-ho!
Hi-ho! Every Friday.
What do you love about Deadly Premonition? What does it do that more video games should do?
Ever since I was really young, a lot of the art that I've been drawn towards has been kind of like odd, or something that would necessarily get a lot of critical acclaim. I mean, I'm not contrarian at all. Like I said, I love the like mainline Zelda games. I love Tears of the Kingdom so much.
Yeah.
I played that game so much. That's like the epitome of like good AAA gaming. But the story's kind of stupid or like nothing. But the side stories are great and the mechanics of it are amazing. But like when I was in high school and early college, I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be an editor. And the stuff that really inspired me, not that this is outsider art necessarily, it was like Venture Brothers.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
It's Always Sunny.
Mhm.
And just the way that the people who made those two shows were so uncompromising in their vision and so in some ways to their detriment. Like those shows don't win awards even though they should, right? Because they're kind of crass and weird. And I loved during that period of my life too, I got super into Red Letter Media. It was like a really big influence on me doing video essay stuff, and they would do these sort of like weird schlocky sketch inserts. And it was that same kind of attitude with Deadly Premonition, where it is such an incredibly singular vision that could have come from no one else. And it's such a rare like there's a billion like riffs on Twin Peaks.
Mhm.
But like we were talking about this one that is so specifically like one, very Japanese, and two, York being so obsessed with American pop culture and talking about like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and Jaws and whatever, just sort of like his personality lends so much to it. And then this world is so dense. Like I remember my friend Gwen took me to a folk art exhibit at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta. And there were these things that, people would work on for years and years and years, like these weird passion projects that were so interesting just in the beauty of expression or the singular expression that only this person could make. And I really feel that with Deadly Premonition. It just like makes me so happy to play it. And it makes me want to make my own art in an uncompromising way. And it's also scary. And there are very dark elements to it. It is like moody and creepy. There are parts, I wasn't like terrified or anything, but there are definitely parts that got under my skin or like disturbing things that happened. Or like some of the how over the top the final reveals are in it. When there's like an underlying themes of like abuse and like really nasty cultural stuff when like weird anime stuff is happening. Again, not to spoil anything.
Yeah, we'll get to
It's just
spoilers
like
shortly.
really fascinating. You what?
We'll open it up to spoilers later on just so we can
Okay,
like speak
yeah.
more openly about this stuff because it's an important part to be able to like talk about the thing fully. Like we're not going to spoil who Laura Palmer's killer is, but we can talk about like Deadly Premonition pretty openly as we get further along because this is about the relationship and I don't want you to feel like you have to hold back on that, right?
I do want people who've never played it to get that experience though.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you won't guess a lot of what happens.
I thought every time I thought I was like, I'm a step ahead. I was like,
No.
buddy, you're 8 steps behind.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is like, there are no red herrings. You see something that's like, that's fucking weird. And like, you're absolutely 100% correct. That is weird, but you're not going to connect it right.
In hindsight, you can, some of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of it is just like, again, that video essay I was watching, there are so many like really transparent clues, but there's just so much going on and you can write it off as like, oh, that's just like a weird character quirk.
Mm-hmm. Because like one really interesting aspect of this is like there's a little bit of voyeurism in how you can navigate the world
Mhm.
because basically wherever there's an open window, you can peek through it and then there will be a loading screen and then, oh, you're looking through a thing. And I didn't do that a lot because I hated the loading screen. It's like you go up to a window and it's like, oh, I could look through a window. And then you press X on the window and it's the loading screen where it's like, pickles are, you can eat a pickle if you want. And I'm like, yeah, I fucking can. Can I see the window now? And then like you look into the window and you're like, yep, Thomas lives there. All right. And then you like press a circle to stop looking at the window. And it's like, you can put bait on a hook. And I'm like, yeah, you sure fucking can. I gotta go now. But yeah, you can look. And then like, if you actually do look when people are home or in the place of business or whatever, you can see them going about their business. And that can give you a look as to what these people do when they're alone.
That's such a commitment to detail, unnecessary detail almost, especially for the player. If you have to sit there, I haven't played it in a minute. I wanted to replay it for this, but I didn't have time.
Mhm.
And I forgot that was an element, probably because I also got sick of the loading screens and then just didn't really do it. The driving is terrible.
Driving's awful, but I grew to appreciate that as the game progressed because the driving is absolute fucking dog shit. And it feels slow and everything is so far away, and there is not enough conversational, like, there's not enough conversation to like fill that time, because there'll be the option to press X and have a conversation. And if you're alone, you're having a conversation with Zach. He's doing like more or less like the Bateman bit of like, have you ever seen, or all that stuff. And he's like talking about Jaws or American Werewolf in London, some other stuff.
Okay, Zach. I've been thinking about what movie I'd like to watch next. And finally, I've made a decision.
It's always hard to narrow it down just to one movie, but I've put a lot of thought into this, and I'm sure you'll agree with me. 1975. Directed by Steven Spielberg himself. The grandfather of panic movies. Set in a small town in Massachusetts. That movie made me stay away from the beach for years. I was always afraid that a hand might come floating up. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah? It's Jaws. The underwater camera work, accompanied by that John Williams music. I'd never been that scared by a movie before. But the best thing about it is that it isn't just another panic movie. The mayor who won't close the beach even when there are so many victims. Chief Brody putting the citizens' lives above all else. The film gave a lot of time to the dispute and friction between them. It certainly had a lot of messages for a 2-hour film. That's probably another reason why it was such a record-breaking hit. One of my regrets in life is that I didn't see it at the movie theater. I guess I was still just a child back then. But still, I wanted to taste that terror in real time.
And those are very entertaining conversations, and then you have to sit in complete silence for another 5 minutes. No radio. The same track playing in the background over and over again. And like, it will sometimes prompt you, like, you want to press X and have another conversation, and it's just like, oh, okay, I'm not actually having a conversation right now.
You can get a fast travel item.
You can.
But it's so convoluted. And so the same with was it the wrench, like the best weapon in the game?
Yeah.
Both of them are just sort of like weird labyrinthine, like weird things you have to do to get either of them.
So this is the part of the game that I really respect and appreciate and see what it's trying to do, because you need to engage with the side content of the game. If you mainline Deadly Premonition, you will see the vision, but you won't see the intention. It's like the Yakuza games, it's like the Shenmue games, it's like the Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. There is a main critical path and you can take it, but you are missing out on so much if you do that, and the rewards that you get for engaging make the mainline stuff so much easier and better. The only reason I was able to complete this game in time to talk about it was because I did the side mission that gave you the walkie-talkie that you could use to fast travel. You have to do 2 missions for George specifically. You have to return one of his missing weights to him, and the weight is called Arnold, and he has another weight called Sylvester. And then another one is you go to his house, and the lead into that is incredible, because York goes up to his house and knocks on George's door. It has to be nighttime, because that's when George is home, because he's the sheriff. And he's like, he doesn't say hello. He says, "George, do you prefer hot sauce or mustard?" And George's like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" He's like, "I thought you needed a friend. I thought you wanted to hang out or something." And he's like, "Yeah, my mom's sick." And he's like, "Can I do anything about that?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "Please, I want to be your friend really badly." And he's like, "She likes this one flower, and it's a flower that only appears when it's raining. And since I happened to pick this flower earlier when it was raining one time, I had it and I gave it to him. And that's the only reason I had the walkie-talkie, is because I sort of walked ass backwards into having a flower already."
That's awesome, though, that you didn't have to, because that's a pain. That quest is a pain. But it's worth it to be able to fast travel.
It is. The driving becomes monumentally better if you go to the junkyard and get the car parts that the general will tell you to get. You just have to engage with the side content to get better things. Like, you get better weapons if you talk to the gunsmith and like give him trading cards that you find throughout the overworld. I never figured out what the bones are about. I never figured out the bones. I just kept finding bones and I didn't know what to do with the bones.
I don't remember, honestly. I don't remember that aspect either. Maybe they do nothing. Maybe it was some cool side content that we both missed.
Like, at one point, the dog, what's his name's dog, will steal your bones. And then you have to go into the back of the truck where the doghouse is and get the bones back. But I still had the bones and I don't know what the bones are from still.
That might be, is that part of the quest to get the really cool wrench? Like the best weapon in the game?
I don't know, because I never killed a single enemy with a melee weapon. I was just shooting.
Someone is listening to this right now being like, you fool, of course it was. Or of course it wasn't.
I'm Googling bones right now.
Yeah, I'm Googling it. That might be, because I remember there's like a very convoluted quest where you get a really good weapon, and that might have been. Because I remember the dog chasing me.
Oh, naturally, it's for Brian at the graveyard. Duh. Why didn't I think of that? I only went to the graveyard the one time. But I had a great time engaging with the side content that I did, and definitely felt enriching, and it gave me that Majora's Mask feeling. It's required for a side quest. When you get all 7, you get the infinite flamethrower?
I guess that's what I was thinking of, not the wrench. If only you'd given it to him. You've got all those bones.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you get it. Yeah, you get one of the infinite weapons in the game. But I got a level with you. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't hurting for ammo. I just kept shooting, and that seemed to be fine. I watched a Yahtzee review for the second Deadly Premonition, and he described the first game as very melee heavy, and I said that was not my experience at all. I guess if I had gotten one of these infinite durability melee weapons, I would have had a different experience, but I just had so much 10mm ammo that I didn't need to.
It's also like we were talking about, it's not a game praised for its combat mechanics.
No.
They slow everything down a lot.
It feels like a parody of Resident Evil 4 gameplay.
Yeah. And there are a few spooky moments, but I would say, the enemies aren't particularly frightening or challenging. Towards the end, some of the boss stuff is more interesting, but it's more about, it's about the game as an experience of really sincere outsider art and really bizarre art. Like I said, so many memorable lines or set pieces are like very funny or haunting or weird. And like we were talking about earlier, it's not something you can start it and then predict what's going to happen. You might predict, you might figure out elements of the murder mystery, but it takes so many really amazing left turns that it's so fun to I like watching let's plays of it even now and seeing people react to that or playing it with friends.
Yeah. You're definitely going to predict the cadence of the game. This is a sequence where it's going to be a shooting thing, then this guy's going to show up, and then this is going to happen. But the actual plot proceedings, the actual mystery itself is going to be a complete whirlwind that it makes up for the fact that you basically know pace wise what is going to happen next in terms of all right, I'm going to enter Creepy Town now.
Yeah.
And the thing that makes the combat interesting and not interesting but worth it is the fact that there is an atmosphere around that. When you enter you know what happened, you know what's going to happen, because every single time York looks at whoever he's hanging out with, usually the police officers, is all right, I gotta go do this by myself now. And he's all right, here it fucking comes. Here comes Vines. It's Vine time, baby. And then you enter the room, and it's wow, I'm in Stranger Things upside down evil world now. It's the evil version of what this room usually looks like. And that atmosphere actually does take it much farther than if I were having to shoot ghosts in a generic room. Or the normal room, I should say.
It's well done. And it's pretty thematically coherent, the color red and all the different, again, without spoiling anything, the different ways that comes into play with the red ring coke killer or all these different things. And it's taken pretty far, the red vines and other the visual elements, I think, are done pretty well.
The seedy, no pun intended, evilness that lies in this town that people either ignore or are trying to bury, or that exists basically in plain sight, that is definitely thematically coherent. It's just all right, time to unload a full clip into a ghost and hopefully it'll die.
One of the 4 kinds of ghosts.
Yeah, all with the same voice lines. Here's the thing. I played a lot of this game while my partner was playing Stardew Valley on the other side of the room. At one point, when all the moaning and ghost stuff was happening, she did say that's actually very creepy and scary. And me, who was 10 hours into the game, yeah, it was. It was.
They do sound almost like death rattles or like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's an impactful element to it, but
Yeah.
not when you hear it 10,000 times.
Yeah.
But what you were saying a second ago about it having a seedy underbelly, I feel like Swery and his team really understood what made Twin Peaks work, which is part of also why it translates so well. And he took like Blue Velvet or other,
Mm-hmm.
it's the evil under American suburbia Lynch trope stuff.
Yeah.
I think he handled that very well. I mean, there are some lines that are kind of like too blunt or out of nowhere over serious topics, but I like how all of that was handled, and I think it makes it very effective. And like I said, a little more haunting than it's not just like, I would never want to demean it as like, oh, it's a wacky Japanese guy or whatever. There's so much more going on with, and I mean, that's like a bad thing to say anyway, but it just makes it, the juxtaposition is so incredible. The like grand artistic vision that's so beautiful with how broken it is a juxtaposition. And then the silliness with the more serious elements is a separate juxtaposition as well.
The game telegraphs it with like the conversations about B movies, these like movies that are shooting very high or like trying to like not grapple with serious topics all the time necessarily, but they are about like serious real world issues often, but it's like in such like a gauche, frank, out there way. And that is what Francis York Morgan's whole deal is. Like there's like scenes where he's just like casually talking about like, you know, serial sexual assaults and such a frank matter that's like normal to him, but like not in like, oh, he's pro that thing, but just like, this is the shit I deal with every single day. And then you're talking to police officers who have never dealt with a real crime ever. So they're just like put off by how like frank he is. And you as an audience member witnessing it are going to feel like weird about it too. And it's not necessarily, oh, it's such a deep and meaningful thing that he says the word 800 rapes out loud or something like that. But it is a character piece, and it is something that informs a bit of the character. And how you feel about that is basically like how you're going to have to feel about this whole game, because it goes into dark territory the whole time.
I think he might be my favorite game protagonist.
I like him a lot, yeah.
I can't think of any. He's just very charming because he's so. It's like, I don't think Swery was necessarily trying to make him like cool.
No.
Or maybe it was like Swery's idea of cool. He's just like a intensely weird guy. I forgot to mention earlier, like if you don't shower enough, he gets like flies that buzz around him, and you can get all these different suits, and it like grows out facial hair if you don't shave.
That's a very interesting thing, because talking about other like people who are given like auteur status in the video game space, Hideo Kojima, there are two mechanics in this game that Swery does before Metal Gear Solid 5 did them. And that is, if you don't shower, you're going to stink. And it actually has like a tangible impact on the game. I think flies will swarm around York. And I never got to this point, but I read that like when people talk to you, they're going to start covering their nose if you stink too much. And you don't shower in this game. There was going to be a shower mechanic, but apparently it was cut, and you just change your clothes and send them off to the cleaners now, which is funnier to me, that it's just like he won't change his clothes and that's why he stinks. There's that, but also the fact that like the way that you make time pass quickly, your song of passing time forward in Majora's Mask, basically the way that they do it in this game is by smoking a cigarette, and the way that you do it in Metal Gear Solid 5 is by smoking a time cigar.
That's interesting.
Yeah, like two things that I feel Kojima had to have like definitely consciously taken from this, because of how they both come into the next Metal Gear game that he releases.
I would be interested to see if he's ever talked about this game
in
an interview, or if he's ever or if Swery's talked about him.
I don't like, you're the parasocial person, right? But like, I feel like this game was supremely his shit. And if he hasn't played it, I would be genuinely so shocked.
Yeah, I thought my brother growing up liked Metal Gear games. I've actually never like fully played one. I think I would like them. I just never made time.
Yeah.
But just cultural osmosis about Kojima, I feel like I have an understanding of what his public persona is.
In Metal Gear Solid 3, there's a character called Paramedic. And every time you save the game, after you save the game, she'll be like, Snake, have you ever seen From Russia with Love? Or Godzilla, King of the Monsters? And you have a full conversation about a movie every single time you save the game. And it's like, York does that every single time he gets in the car.
Yeah.
It's the same brainworms.
That reminds me, Zach. Did you know this one?
Jaws also appears in another movie that was produced by Spielberg, The the second Back to the Future. It was directed by Robert Zemeckis, who later made Forrest Gump. That's also a masterpiece, of course, but we'll discuss that another time. So, the scene where Jaws appears is right after Marty McFly goes 30 years into the future. He passes by a movie theater and is attacked by a holographic shark. Marty is shocked, of course, but looking closer, he sees the words, Jaws Part 19. The director is credited as Steven Spielberg Jr. In reality, there were actually only 4 Jaws movies. It was still a great joke. 30 years from 1985 would be 2015. We'll be there pretty soon. I wonder what life would be like by then, Zach.
Talking a bit more about the story, I think we should like progressively get into like the spoiler country here. What do you think of like the other characters of this town?
And we can get into spoiler territory.
Yeah, we're opening it up.
I think it's so interesting. It's such a weird game in that aspect too, especially if you're going to talk about like Thomas, all the stuff that happens with Thomas and with Emily. I remember being annoyed towards the end of the game when you play as Emily, when she's running, she has like the anime girl run or whatever, like the very like dainty. And to me, it's like she's a cop that's kind of demeaning, or that's kind of like, it doesn't fit the character. I don't think anyone can be as charming as York, but I think all of the other characters, even with some with Thomas, I don't even know if I would say I have complaints about it. It's just like complicated things with like gender expression and with the character. Ultimately, I think Thomas is a sympathetic character, but I think some people who I've talked to who've played the game didn't appreciate stuff that happened with Thomas.
Yeah, I have trans friends who do not like the Thomas stuff at all, but I've also seen pro Thomas stuff, and it's like, I'm not touching that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the second game has some trans stuff that's way more thorny, and some like racial stuff that's more thorny.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's clear ultimately, at least to me as someone who's not a trans woman, swear he intended Thomas to be a sympathetic character. That can still play into harmful tropes,
Yes.
like Silence of the Lambs type stuff. But I don't think it ever, to me as someone again who is not like trans film, it didn't hit that. I wish George had gotten more development, and I do like Kaysen a lot, or I think Kaysen is very entertaining. Because you beat it today, you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you that's all that stuff is fresh, right?
Oh, it's so fresh.
Kaysen stuff. What do you think? Yeah. What are your thoughts on all of these weird people?
So I'm glad I finished the game because, firstly, I was like, how I feel about Francis York Morgan is going to like hinge entirely on how they land this plane. Because if he's just weird and it like ends with like, and he was badass and cool, and also like if it was going to be like, and he was the killer the whole time, both of those would be like, shut the fuck up. I hate this now.
Yeah.
But since it was he's neither the killer and he's neither like an ultimate badass, like specifically like the case and stuff and how that relates back to York and why he is the way he is, I do find that very, very interesting. I think that, yeah, there's a really good point about Emily and everything like that with how the character moves and everything like that. But like the scene around it is so goofy. It's like the one time different music plays in the entire game, and it's like this weird like jet set radio type track while you follow a dog running around for almost the entire episode.
We're both here in case and have really goofy runs, and
Yeah.
it just keeps going. It's just
But
like
the dog stops every 5 seconds, so you don't even maintain the momentum of a run. You're just running, and then it's a cutscene where you're York with a bag over his head thinking, God, Emily is so fucking hot. I hope I see her soon. And then you cut back to Emily and you're playing as Emily and you're running around. It's like, I'm following a dog. And you cut back to York and he's like, yeah, I think I love Emily. She's very hot and I want to see her again. And then you cut back to Emily. She's like, I gotta find York. Where's this dog going? And then like Kaysen says like, yeah, we just ran around a big circle that entire time. And it's like, I love you, game. I kind of love the way you waste my time. But God, I was so angry until you did that punchline.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't know if you've ever played Earthbound. Earthbound has so many similar things where like it intentionally wastes your time as a punchline. And if you're not down for that kind of shit, then you're going to hate the game. But if you are open to being clowned on a little bit, you're going to forgive a lot of stuff. I realized I didn't answer your question about how I feel about these characters.
Oh, no, it's fine. No, it's so interesting talking to someone who just played it for the first time, who you beat it today. So it's cool to hear your thoughts on it regardless.
Yeah, like I wish I had like done a few more of the side bits because I feel like there's some characters that never quite cohere for me. Like I would see side stuff come up while I was in the middle of doing something else and be like, okay, I'm going to dedicate myself to doing some side stuff, and then I actively look for it. But like the problem is the map is so zoomed in that you can't zoom out and see the stuff that's like really far out, like the community center and the hospital or the art exhibit or anything like that. So, and then there's a point like halfway through the game where so much of the side stuff is just closed out to you because characters start getting off the board or are in jail or are just they're just unavailable. And that becomes so like, oh man, I kind of closed the door on dealing with, and you can like load a chapter and then you can experience that stuff again. The game very much wants you to experience all of it because again, it lives and dies by that side stuff. But you also begin to appreciate why like Majora's Mask solution for that was like you're living through the same 3 days over and over again, or how like Shenmue is just more of like a hangout vibe and this is you solving a murder. And again, I appreciate this game and its vision. I do feel like I locked myself out of a couple things though, and that if I had a couple extra days, I could have like really sank my teeth into more. But I do feel very endeared to what I have played.
What did you think of the other characters in particular?
One thing I just like found very interesting with George is you kind of like have like his deal like set up pretty much immediately. You talked about like watching a YouTube video essay that was functionally a recap of the plot, and one of the ones I watched makes a point of saying, and you meet George for the first time when he's like comes out of the woods. He was like, I was looking for you. Where were you? And you realize, oh no, the woods. That's where I first saw that thing. And then it's like, oh God, they set it up from the beginning. Or like the thing with like his mother being like this source of like abuse for him. They set that up in the plot itself. But like if you do the side mission, he's talking about his sick mother. But he also talks about his mother in the past tense when he's talking about his abuse in the midpoint through the game. And I remember being at that point being like, wait, is the mom alive or dead? Because he said she wasn't doing well. You also still live with your mother and you're also talking about your mom in the past tense. And then those reveals later down the line, you're like, they set it up.
Yeah.
They set it up. George is interesting because I definitely feel like we could have gotten a bit more track before we get to where the destination was. But at the same time, like it's also like insane that like it all culminates in you fighting Akuma from Street Fighter as a trauma monster. But I do really like what George represents as like this sense of like, and I learned that the way you get respect is through power, and you become a cop that way. And that sort of contradicts York's worldview of like, no, you are supposed to help people. That's why I was traumatized. I went through like parent trauma stuff, and my conclusion from that was I want to help people. And your conclusion was like, I need to be the person with power so that no one can hurt me, and also I can exercise authority over others in weird, creepy, fucked up ways. And like that informs things. Like it's like this thing where it's like, yeah, they say it out loud, but like it's just like the implications of like why the character is the way they are and the authority that they exercise over people, and like how you can extrapolate that to the real world. And it's like, damn, fuck, okay, cool.
How would you compare that? Because to me, like in Alan Wake, none of the characters had that kind of like weight to them, even if it tried to explore certain themes. Maybe it was because I wasn't as emotionally attached to Alan. But I don't remember any boss fight where I was like, dang, I can kind of relate to this evil anime guy. Or I can understand where he's coming from or how it relates to like social commentary.
I think the thing with like Alan Wake is like it's more of like I think a lot of the appeal comes into like being aware of like the Stephen King like light and darkness. It's more everything is bouncing off of like Alan's psyche and it bouncing back to Alan and like his weird neuroses, that I find that stuff interesting more so than I find like this boss interesting. And because Deadly Premonition like treats these characters like they're people and they have these elaborate backstories written for them, and while not all of that is in the game, they were written with like this like elaborate, like we got to make these feel like real people. We're naturally going to like them more than these characters that are literally written by Alan Wake to be representations of parts of himself.
That's true.
that's a great point of comparison. And it's a thing where it's like, I kind of appreciate what Alan Wake is doing more, having this conversation as it relates to Alan. And then I also appreciate what Deadly Premonition is doing more because of their approach in terms of like, things do bounce back to York or like the player audience POV character in some ways, but like there's so many different flavors and so many people feel grounded, but also very heightened in this intentionally strange way. Like there's literally like a Kiefer Sutherland Lost Boys character in here. It's weird.
That's a good point. And it's like the voyeuristic element of Deadly Premonition, like not just literally looking through windows, but like you're new to this town and looking at everybody else and all of their lives and how they all interconnect as an outsider, versus Alan Wake like being God. And it's like you're looking at it through his perspective, but he has the omnipotent perspective. He has kind of apples and oranges.
Mm-hmm. Alan Wake, the thing that's very interesting about it is like these are both games that were like cut with compromise. There's a driving section near the end of Alan Wake that's literally only there because they programmed there to be driving in the game, but they never found a way to incorporate it because it's a more level-based game. So you're just spending a weirdly long time driving to the climax and like making stops along the way that feel like that segment in Half-Life 2 where you're just like driving and then stopping and you have a shooting section, you get back in the car and you drive. And that's literally only there because it's like, well, we meant this to be a different game when we started, but we didn't have the money for it. And then Deadly Premonition is kind of like, well, we didn't have the budget to make a great game, but we did spend a lot of time on the driving around and talking to people part of this. And boy, that's where you're going to find the value. Did we make the shooting good? Absolutely fucking not. Did we make it so that you can turn the blinkers on in your car even though there's no function for that? Damn Skippy.
Do we have a budget for sound effects? No.
So, are you going to hear the near, 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 near anytime there's a dramatic reveal that kind of undercuts it? Yes. Are you still going to feel compelled by this narrative and like these weird specificities that like, it's like, what is going on in your head, man? Yes, you're going to be interested.
I also love the whistle track, that kind of like main Deadly Premonition theme that's kind of repetitive, like the do 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 do.
Yeah.
Another early scene that is just that people reference a lot that's just very emblematic of the game is where you're sitting across the very long table from the old anime lady who runs the hotel, and the music is playing so much louder than the dialogue. It's like very poor. I don't know if it's like different in different versions, but it's like infamously poorly mixed, almost like an intentional joke where they're having to talk loudly, and it's almost like a meta joke. But you don't, with the whole game too, you don't know if it's intentionally funny or just like a beautiful happenstance.
I couldn't help but notice. Aside from you and me, there seems to be no other guests or workers around.
What's that? The salt's in that white shaker there.
Thank you. I was wondering if there were any other guests or workers here.
Oh, no one else. My husband and I used to run this place, but he's in heaven now.
You've been working here alone since then. Must be hard by yourself.
Oh my, we're all out of pepper. I'm very sorry.
It must be difficult to run a hotel by yourself.
Well, yes, I suppose. I could just live on my pension. But I have to admit, running a hotel is kind of like a hobby of mine.
That's nice. Polly, it might help to hear you better if you could sit a little closer.
Oh my, Mr. Morgan, you're embarrassing me. So early in the day, too. I think I'm a little too old for you.
And I still love my departed husband. May God rest his soul. I appreciate the invitation, but I'm fine over here.
Polly, I can hardly hear you from all the way over there.
You're exaggerating. This is fine. It won't do to be all clumped together with such a large table and cafeteria. We have to make use of all this space.
It's of vital importance that these matters be attended to, so we may have to bring in a friend from Yonkers.
What?
I say we may have to bring in a friend from Yonkers!
And then you say FK in the coffee, and it's like, oh, it's Forrest Kaysen.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
oh, shit.
Like, of course it is.
We solved it day one.
Did you see that, Zach? Clear as a crisp spring morning. F.K. in the coffee. I knew I could count on it. Never fails. Now then, let's get going.
He makes a connection like in the second episode. He's like, Forrest Kasem, we need to talk to Forrest. You do that, and then like you're like, all right, Forrest is normal, but like he did contribute towards the case, so that moves the needle here. And then so much other stuff happens. You just sort of like forget Forrest as an option, even though he's with you and helping you the entire time. And then like that all happens. Again, the way that is able to actually pay off into a rewarding thing, despite how goofy and unassuming he was this entire time. It is genuinely good.
Yeah, it's so, like I said, it's so interesting talking to you right after you just played it for the first time. What are your overall impressions? Even if you had hated it, it would have been an interesting discussion. Like, obviously, this game means a lot to me, but I can understand why people would dislike it or might like Alan Wake more, since we keep doing the comparison.
I like it. Since a lot of it's fresh on my mind, the thorniness of it is something I'm still reckoning with because, for example, Thomas and this representation of queerness, it's never really elaborated on whether Thomas is trans or gay, but like one thing that we do know is Thomas was groomed because of being queer in a small town that is isolated and won't talk about things. The big incident that informs like how this town behaves is like this attack 50 years ago where like chemicals were released that made everybody go crazy and start killing each other, including a guy in a raincoat who was using an axe to murder people. And since then, it was a rainy day that day, and because people don't really know why they went crazy and killed people, they blamed it on the rain, and from that day forward, nobody did anything outside in the rain. And it's the Pacific Northwest, so it rains like half the time at minimum. So this isolating community of people who just refuse to talk about an incident, because there's a gag order from the US military, but also the way they talk about it like it's a fairy tale, and there's one specific bad guy they can blame on all that. The scapegoat, who was actually not the scapegoat, but somebody who was trying to help in a shitty situation. That definitely like can be tied back to how Thomas feels. Like, I am alone. I literally cannot be out. Like, it's raining outside. I can't go out.
That's true. I never thought about that.
Like, if it were like just straightforwardly like this was a gay guy that was groomed, I could see how this would be less thorny for people. But because there is the element where Thomas wears dresses and wigs and is doing it for the killer, it's like this thing where it's like, is this coercive because he's lonely? But it can definitely read as trans because Thomas is seen as a valid goddess. So I feel uncomfortable with like the whole what pronouns, because they don't refer to Thomas as anything other than Thomas. Almost every single time you see Thomas dead, Thomas is presenting as a woman, and there's nobody forcing Thomas to do that now. So we can conclude Thomas is trans. Sure, her identity is validated in death, but that thorniness, like they only talk about it in relation to the fact that she's only out when she is actively doing harm to people. That is on behalf of somebody who is only validating that identity to manipulate her. And we know that Swery is on the record as being a pro-trans person. He like advocates for trans rights in interviews when asked, but that doesn't excuse the depiction of the thing. Like, intention and how something is received are two completely different things. And I will not argue against anybody who is like, this is bad and I hate it.
Yeah, and similar to you, I've known people who really disliked it, or people who really embraced it. Because, like you said, it's so thorny, it's very complex, very weird. And I don't mean this in like a prescriptive way of how people should think or should behave. But I definitely think for some people, there's a desire for like all queer characters and trans characters and representation to be very like clean and not complicated and not realistic and just like purely positive or aspirational or like heroic. But there's certainly a balance between that extreme and the sort of, like I said, Silence of the Lambs stuff that Swery unintentionally is pushing about. Because you could also say that like George, because of his abuse, is how he turned out. But you wouldn't assume Swery is saying something bad about child abuse victims, but they're not as marginalized in the same way that like trans people are.
Right.
In real life.
Yeah. through all of these characters, not all of them, but like most of them, we were able to see a facet of abuse or trauma or something that they're trying to bury. York is literally a split personality created to cope with a traumatic situation. And Zach, the person that he's talking to, is actually the person who experienced the trauma of watching his mom get murdered and his dad kill himself. And anagram is supposed to be, or anagram is supposed to be the Laura Palmer proxy for that. But the thing is, like, Laura Palmer's like thing, beside even before Fire Walk with Me, like feels like a character because of how people react to the death of it, the void that leaves and the stuff that brings up in the community. And then Fire Walk with Me brings it all home by actually exploring Laura as a character and what she was feeling and not just the feelings that she left. Anna's not that. Anna barely has anything to do with it. Anna is the inciting incident, and you can argue, and I would agree, that the writing of the women in this game are significantly worse than what the writers of Twin Peaks were doing throughout.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like 1,000%.
But if you want to look at this as like an abuse allegory, where like Anna is indicative of like George's MO, where he goes after young people to groom them into his cults where he accumulates power. And we know that Emily moved to this town when she was 17 years old, and that George did try to do something with her, and it didn't take, and he tried to emotionally distance himself, and he feels humiliated by it. He can't make her like him. And we know that he groomed Thomas when Thomas was a teenager, and that's why Thomas is so like wrapped up in this, like the one man that will see me as queer and feeds into that. And I get a tattoo that has like Love G on it. And all I have to do are like these like horrible things that he says, but nobody else is giving me any affection of any kind. I don't have a framework for it. And that's what people who groom do. They do it to people who don't have any framework. And Anna is indicative of that, but we don't get to see what that's like beforehand. And we don't know what that was like for the other people because they're more representative than they are characters. They're archetypal at best. And that's frustrating because this is a game that has like these elaborate backgrounds, but because these specific women are lined up to be victims, we get less.
That's true. And I also like don't remember most of their apart from Emily, like most of the female characters. And I remember more about the old lady who works the hotel than most of the characters who died, just because she stood out more, was like more unique or had more memorable moments to me, which is unfortunate.
And like she's cryptic and weird, and it's like, does she hear me? And she's avoiding all my questions.
Yeah.
And it's fun. You get the conclusion of all that. She's hurt too. She's also experienced grief. You get like seeds of interesting characters, like Diane being an art curator who doesn't have people that she can talk art with, and her involvement with Kasem and all that stuff. Like that is interesting, but it's like you don't find the interesting folds of that until after she dies, and it's all through like the lens of men. And that is something that like, say, Twin Peaks interacts with through Laura as like a negative thing, and this game just sort of like has like this kind of like, yeah, she's a woman. What do you mean? She's like, that's of course she's going to be seen through the eyes of men.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. But overall, like I know we're talking about like the dicey things of this game, but I'm not trying to say that as like anybody who likes it is wrong, because I ultimately love what it does with abuse, and I feel very strongly about Francis Morgan, Zach/York now. That is a character that I can say, like, now that I've completed the game, means quite a bit to me in terms of the trauma of it all. I love Twin Peaks. I'm going to eat this shit up. But I'm not trying to like wear that with rose-tinted goggles and acknowledge that like that character was created in the wake of like some dicey writing along the way.
100%. And like I said, the second game is so much worse with, I think there's a character who's kind of like a literal magical Negro. And I thought a lot about how this is such like an ugly reflection of American pop culture that Swery, I guess, was kind of like uncritically consuming and then just reproducing a lot of like stereotypical stuff from older American movies. It's not to like infantilize him. Cause like, I think there are things in it where if you're up on like international culture, you should know not to do. But I think it wasn't from a malicious place. There's like, I don't remember exactly what happens. I've only played it once, but there is worse trans stuff in the second game to where I think he apologized and maybe patched it out or something.
I do remember an apology where it's like, I don't want to misrepresent trans people. I'm
Mhm.
bringing on consultants. I am sorry.
Yeah.
Don't be mad at the characters. Don't be mad at me, I think was something to the effect of what he said, which you've done this like 4 times already. Because as I understand it, there's a trans person in literally every single one of your games. And I appreciate that you support them. You got to do this stuff before the game is made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the second game also has some weird stuff with like a developmentally disabled character that is not really, it wouldn't be acceptable in like American media. I don't really know the how that kind of representation is seen in Japan, but the second game is also like the frame rate issues are a lot worse. The overworld feels a little emptier, but the last 15 minutes are so off the rails. I was like laughing so hard I was crying. And I was like, if you made a third game, I'd buy it. Like I never pre-order stuff. I would pre-order it day one.
Right.
It's still, even though the second game kind of sucks.
Yeah. Well, that ties into one of the questions I was going to ask you, which is your feelings on the second game. You're asking me my feelings, and I feel like I took up a lot of the discussion time here, so I want to make sure that you've made your feelings known. What impact would you say that Deadly Premonition made on you?
I think mostly what I was saying earlier about how even just thinking about that game, I feel very inspired to make more idiosyncratic art. Not necessarily like trying to go against commercialism in art. I don't really feel like Swery wasn't like making that kind of a statement, but it's just so special and so endearing, and so like this person's passion project that probably shouldn't have existed but does exist, and it just makes me so happy that it exists. And it's one of those things, like a lot of other cult games or movies, where if you meet someone and you realize that you both like it, it's like, oh, we've just learned something about each other. Like if I meet someone and I know they like Zelda, that doesn't really mean anything. They're just really good games that everybody likes, pretty much. Whereas Deadly Premonition is like, not only do you seek out weird outsider art, but you can appreciate, like you said, the game kind of bullies you or plays with your time or your perception. A lot of people understandably wouldn't like that, but when I meet people who are really into that, I think, oh, immediately, like, we have something in common.
Yeah. There are people whose taste I respect who would sit through this entire game, play it, and say, not for me.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, yeah, totally, I get it. But you playing that game all the way through tells me enough about like how you see this medium and how much you're willing to try if you actually meaningfully engage with it. You are in it for more than just like, I'm here to play a game to pass the time. And that alone is enough to justify this game's existence. A big thing with me about like Francis Morgan, I when it's like my childhood wasn't like, oh, I saw people die and I had to live with that my whole life. But it is this thing where it's like you grow up and it's like a lot of the stuff you view is through like a lens through media. And like I am to this day, I'm just a huge like film enthusiast. And like a lot of these conversations are like, oh no, he's me, isn't he? Oh no.
Yeah.
Just the way he's like talking about movies, like the way that like dudes will talk about like sports players back and forth, but he's doing it instead. It's like A Clockwork Orange and how like the actors in that is in a different thing. Malcolm McDowell.
Now the name Malcolm McDowell rings another bell. You know the movie I'm talking about, right, Zach? Don't tell me you're thinking about Clockwork Orange. Malcolm McDowell, come on, it's pretty obvious. Blue Thunder. Came out in 1983, was directed by John Badham. Malcolm plays the bad guy in that one. He just totally outshines the hero, Roy Scheider. At least I think so. I have to say, not many people agree with me about Blue Thunder. Zach, if you disagree with any of my opinions about movies, just come out and speak your mind, okay? Just speak your mind.
It's like, oh God, I've had this exact conversation before. That's not great.
Oh no, it's a mirror.
But like this like view through the world where like you're animated to learn about things because you saw it in a movie and you want to learn more about that. But also like this like specific relationship with not feeling complete and trying to find yourself and hope that person will emerge when the time is right. Because you can feel like a big part of like the York side, the one that is talking about all these movies, he's trying to live life through movies because York's like an angel, you know, like it's a wings with desire type angel that's like in love with humanity and loves consuming the culture of it. And like, that's the way he connects through it. But Zach is the person, Zach is the body, and Zach needs to live his life and not just like live through the movies. And I feel like that is like not the message of the game. I think it's just like a fold, like a character informing detail, but it is still one that resonated with me. And I think that's like a big immediate impact that the game is leaving on me.
That's awesome. It's like a very beautiful interpretation of it as well. It's really cool.
I appreciate that. When did you watch Twin Peaks in relation to playing this game?
I think I watched Twin Peaks in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I skipped a lot of season 2. I don't know if I finished season 2 at that point, but my parents were big Twin Peaks fans. It's where my dad, when I was very young, he would listen to the soundtrack to go to sleep. So I think my parents probably like referenced it. So I would have watched at least the first season of Twin Peaks well before playing this, maybe like 5 years plus. So I had that kind of, with both this and Alan Wake, that was already there for me, the groundwork.
Yeah, because I know some people who like got into Twin Peaks through this.
That must be crazy.
Yeah. I don't know if that would lower the game in your estimation if you thought like it's influenced by Twin Peaks and then you watch it's like, oh God, it's like wholesale, huh?
Yeah.
But for me, it's like I'm able to appreciate like having watched all of Twin Peaks and owning, the Firewalk with Me criterion and feeling so strongly about like The Return as like a work of just a monumental achievement of art. I actually think The Return is like the defining work of the 21st century in terms of like art, like our relationship with it and the ownership of it and the conclusions that it reaches about art and what it can give us. And I think that makes it like definitely, especially with the reboots and revivals of other stuff that came out in its wake, like I think it only ages better. As someone who feels very strongly about that stuff, like of course I'm going to love anything that like has like that Twin Peaks energy to it. Like I saw the TV Glow that came out last year. I'm not trans. I cannot speak to the trans experience, but like the actual like circumstances of like not feeling like a complete person and like the attitudes about art and our relationship with it that it takes from The Return, that's definitely like an influence on it. And it's like, damn, I love that. And like for similar reasons, I love so much of Deadly Premonition and what it has to say about being a person.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't finish The Return. Now I started watching it with my cousin that I keep talking about and we fell off on it. Yeah, and I wonder too, I would be so interested as people like around our age, or I guess older as well, like what influence has Deadly Premonition had on other video games? Because I haven't seen a ton of it. I was watching, I think it was Long Legs, where I was like, parts of this feel like Deadly Premonition. Very unlikely, but sometimes I'll watch something and I'll think, this reminds me so much of this, and I wonder if like someone who worked on this thought about this, or if I'm just like making Pepe Sylvia board connections when there aren't any.
I literally texted my girlfriend because she asked me like how the ending of the game was, and I texted her, it's fucking Long Legs. The ending of the game is fucking Long Legs.
Well, so I'm not crazy, right?
No, you are right.
So I was like watching, I was like, this feels obviously like with Long Legs, it's like again Silence of the Lambs, Twin Peaks, but I'm like, this feels like Deadly Premonition. I think that there's somebody.
Because of like the Lynch of it all, like there's obviously going to be a thing. But I texted my girlfriend like, it's fucking Long Legs. Deadly Premonition owes David Lynch $1 million, but Long Legs owes this game $20.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I definitely thought about it. I do think that like Kojima definitely took the mechanics of like time passage and being a dirty, dirty boy into Metal Gear Solid 5, because those are just two very specific mechanics from the same game that pop up 5 years later. I'm like, he was doing sim shit. He was trying to do simulation shit. I see you, buddy. I'm excited. I mean, like this is the kind of game that makes me animated about playing more, for lack of a better term, shitty games that are taking big swings. I want to play some bad shit right now, or some shit that's like trying to fight me a little bit.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other games that were kind of broken that I loved. I really like Psychonauts too. I should have mentioned that one. I remember the meat circus level being very frustrating, or like poor platforming design, but like what a beautiful game.
It's a great game that's definitely has like platforming in the mid 2000s wasn't the best all the time, was it?
No, because I grew up on this. I should have mentioned too, the Spyro games when I was like 10 years old. And those are still a lot of elements that didn't age well.
Mm-hmm.
And the remaster was pretty terrible in my opinion. Had like longer load times than the original game. But they're the beautiful level design and like color palette choices. And
yeah, the combat in this game being so superfluous and like so much of like the actual like follow this guy. There's a mission in this game where you tail Nick on the way to the museum and you're literally just driving 25 miles an hour for almost 10 real world minutes. And there's not enough not enough conversations that pass during that. You just have to like power through it, and you can't speed up too much. So you have to like consciously like press the button that like controls your speed over and over again. Otherwise you're going to catch up to him and fail it. And it's like, this is like the worst missions of the GTA games. And here it is in an outsider art kind of game. And man, I hate it now, but this also makes me hate that it appears in Grand Theft Auto games more. So it's almost like you're making other games worse in my mind, and that's what's making you better.
I had this like over COVID again, I got really into the Lupin the Third series. It's like a super long running anime and manga series that I watched in like 2003, so I'm a longtime fan, but I got really into it. And some of it is so trash. Some of it is like unwatchable. There's like weird stuff with Hitler. It can get weirdly anti-Semitic, which I had.
Yeah, there's always weird stuff with Hitler and anti-Semitism going on all the time everywhere.
Yeah, there's some of that. There's like sexual assault stuff that can get very dark. But then some of it is just like like Miyazaki's first movie is a Lupin movie, and it's amazing.
Yeah,
and there's so many other.
Show.
Yeah, there's a mini series that the lady who did Yuri on Ice did. That's like a cool feminist, like jazzy, subversive piece of art. And I was reading about like intermittent reinforcement, like slot machines. If you won a little bit every time, like you wouldn't get the same like dopamine rush when it's good, or like rats if or like pigeons if they press a button and they get like one piece of food every time, it's whatever. But if it's randomized, then they go crazy and they just like have to keep pushing the button. And Deadly Premonition is a little bit like that, where it's like the next 5 minutes might be horribly boring or weird, or it might be the best thing I've ever seen. And there's an element of that almost makes it more compelling than a game that is just like wall to wall good. Like I love Disco Elysium. There's like every minute of that game is amazing, but I would rank Deadly Premonition higher in my like top 10 list, just because it's like that discrepancy is so fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I'd played this over any like bog standard Ubisoft game because it's not just a destination. This game has like this journey is so everything along the way is so wild and weird that it's like I'm here for the ride, even if a lot of it is fucking shitty.
Yeah.
You talk about like the slot machine thing. The fishing mini game is literally like kind of a slot machine. Like you can press X to stop it and like you can read the pattern, but it is trying its best to fool you. I didn't get hurt much during this game. I never got a game over through combat. I only got a game over because of a quick time event failure. And the other time I got a game over was because I accidentally pressed circle during the mandatory fishing section where you have to dig the documents out of the river. I spent a full 30 minutes doing that because every time I thought I knew the pattern, it would just go one extra or one less. And it drove me up a goddamn wall. So yeah, just to relate your thing back to the roulette. There's literally a roulette section of this game.
Not fondly remembered by most people who played this game, I don't think.
How do you back up a fishing minigame? Fishing's supposed to be the cool part. What would you recommend to people based on the discussion we had today?
I think if people are open to that and have the time and the kind of like the patience and bandwidth for outsider art, I always recommend Deadly Premonition. And if you want a really great horror experience, find a way to play the original Silent Hill 2. It's also pretty bizarre, but I think it has a much wider appeal as just like a oppressive psychological horror game. Check out, I don't even know if you can play Lake of Roaches. I would have to look, but that was a weird little like 5-minute the outsider art game that really stuck with me as well.
Yeah. Like a really big part about this game is like it's survival horror, not in the sense where it's like you have to maintain bullets and everything like that, but you do have like your heart rate that you get stabilizer for, and that never once became a problem. I never took stabilizer a single time in this game, but you do have hunger. Your character gets tired. Your character grows hair. Your character gets stinky. And it's very entertaining to maintain those aspects. And that being the survival horror is that you just have to take care of your character.
You gotta eat pickles or whatever.
They get gross and you have to eat a turkey sandwich that you found in a locker in an abandoned mill that hasn't been in operation in literally decades. Like that stuff rules. I love that resource management. I love like the weird time passage thing. And I love the outsider take on America, which is why I'd also recommend Dead Rising, another Xbox 360 game that does that. It is, again, a Japanese developer doing a cultural critique of America. And like you have like time limits to do certain things, and you do have to feed your character if you want to do the survival mode section of the game. Just like that time orientation. It's like hard. I thought about Dead Rising like 50 times in this game. It's not a 1-for-1. Dead Rising is more of like a engaging with the mechanics thing than Dead Rising is. Than Deadly Premonition is. I both have dead in the title. That's another relation. So Dead Rising, I have an episode on that. If y'all already have played this game, check that episode out too. Check out Alan Wake, because that's another 2010 video game where it's like the gameplay. The gameplay of Deadly Premonition and Alan Wake are very similar in that like it's not about the combat, guys. It's like somebody trying to do Resident Evil 4 in a place where it doesn't belong. But definitely check out Alan Wake. Zelda Majora's Mask, I shouted out a couple times. I have to do that because especially with the way that routines and schedules work and how like the story is about the town and the people you engage with, and that's where you're going to find meaning, and that's where you're actually going to help people. Zelda Majora's Mask. And weird left field one, check out NBC's Hannibal, that Hannibal show that NBC did with Brian Fuller, starring Mads Mikkelsen and Hugh Dancy. Great stuff. And if you want to see dark queer stuff that is better, definitely check that out.
I was thinking of Hannibal during this conversation.
Yeah. We did mention Silence of the Lambs like 50 times.
I did. I was thinking about Brian Fuller did an interview talking about whether he would include sexual assault in Hannibal or not. And he said he felt like 40 minutes is not enough time to explore like the bandwidth of like how traumatic that is. Like he was criticizing SVU. And I was also thinking about how, because I did a video essay about Hannibal, oh my God, like 9 years ago. And Fuller said that anime influenced Hannibal, but he never said what anime. So I tried so hard to figure it out. I assumed Monster, Naoki Urasawa's series, but I never got, because there are some like weird moments, and there's a moment where a character asks Will Graham if Hannibal is his nakama, which in Japanese means very good friend, and it's like a really weird and awkward, and that's a word they use a lot in One Piece. So I was like, is this yeah? But there are like sort of stylistic similarities between Deadly Premonition and Hannibal, and like you said, Hannibal does a much more interesting, complex, like fully fleshed out version of queer horror as well, especially having a openly gay showrunner.
Yeah, definitely. Hannibal would love Sanji. I do think that'd be.
Yeah, he ended up killing and eating so many of these characters. He'd be like, that's very rude.
Yeah, but he couldn't do shit to Luffy, so yeah, I don't think he'd last very long. I think Luffy would take care of Hannibal Lecter. These are the conversations we have over here on Select and Start. Do you have anything else to say about Deadly Premonition before I let you promote yourself?
I don't think so. I think we covered it. I guess watching it out of context might ruin experiencing these moments for yourself, but I always really like the two best friends Let's Play. This is also very parasocial. They're these two guys who used to do Let's Plays together, and then they quit working with each other a long time ago. But there are a lot of like fan compilations of their Deadly Premonition playthrough, and just like the combination of their joy and their frustration and exasperation, and then like love of the game. I related to it a lot, and I'll go back and watch those sometimes. So I could also recommend checking those out.
Yeah, it's definitely a game that you got to share or like just see other people play to get like the full like Deadly Premonition experience out of it. Like you can carry it in your heart, but it's about seeing how it lands in other people's heart too. Mm-hmm. Shannon, this was a really fun episode. Thank you for I played this game because you threw it out as a recommendation, and I appreciate you getting me to play this game. Thank you for making the time to come onto my show. Before I let you go, please promote the hell out of yourself.
Well, thank you for playing it. Thank you for coming at it with an open mind and giving it grace like you were talking about. Mm-hmm. You can find me on Blue Sky at Strucci, Strucci. I am on Twitter as Plenty of Alcoves, but I don't really use Twitter anymore for reasons. I mean, I haven't deleted it, but I don't really like posting on there anymore. If you want to see my old video essays, just look up Fake Friends Parasocial or look up Strucci Movies, Strucci. And like I said, I'm currently like right now, I haven't done a video essay in like 3 years. but I'm currently a player on the Southern Gothic body horror queer road trip coming of age kind of podcast, Oddity Roadshow, and I'm really happy with. I play a mean little gay con man who's trying to outrun a deal with a demon, and developing that character has been super fun and challenging as we've gone on. So I would recommend checking out Oddity Roadshow or my old video essays on YouTube.
And just with that character pitch alone, I'm sold. Shannon, thank you again for coming on. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of Select and Start. Once again, I'm your host, editor, and promoter, Keifer. If you enjoyed this episode, please give the show a positive review wherever you're listening to this. Engagement helps the show. Your feedback will improve it. And if you want to get more engaged, give the show a follow on Twitter at SelectPodStart and on Blue Sky at Select and Start. If you have thoughts about Deadly Premonition or any other games we've discussed, send a DM or leave a comment, and I will gladly read it on the show. You can also support me on Patreon. If you pledge at least $1 or more a month, you'll get early access to new episodes, as well as extended episodes with exclusive content. That's on patreon.com/Keifer's Corner. You can find a link to that and the rest of my projects in the description of this episode. Select and Start is on the Moonshot Network, which is supported by its own Patreon. Find out more on moonshotpods.com. The art for the show is made by my best friend, Avery Ott. You can follow him on social media with the handle at Avery Robin Ott. That's AVRY Robin OTT. The show's theme song was composed by Mike Petrie. You can check out the links in the description for both of their works, as well as Shannon's. All right, I think that's it. She doesn't need to come here to see trees. There's tons of trees outside.
A candy-colored clown they call the Sandman tiptoes to my room every night, just to sprinkle stardust and to whisper, go to sleep, everything is all right.
My name is Ellen Wake. I'm a singer.
I close my eyes, then I drift away.
What the hell are you doing in my house?
Can I live here?
Get out of here, Alan.